The camera flashes were blinding, each burst of light capturing Park Jin-woo's most vulnerable moment. South Korea's most powerful CEO knelt on the cold marble floor of Incheon Airport's departure gate, his perfectly tailored Armani suit wrinkled from hours of desperate waiting. His usually immaculate hair fell across his forehead as tears, real tears, streamed down the face that graced magazine covers and corporate boardrooms. "Amara, please." His voice cracked as he gripped her trembling hands. "Don't get on that plane." Around them, journalists pressed closer with their cameras, microphones thrust forward like weapons. The headline was already writing itself. Korea's golden son begs foreign woman not to leave. His mother's ultimatum rang in his ears from their confrontation hours earlier. Choose the company or this phase of rebellion. Amara Santos stood frozen, her boarding pass clutched in one hand while the other remained intertwined with his fingers. Her dark eyes, usually sparkling with warmth, now held nothing but heartbreak. The red umbrella that had become their symbol of protection lay forgotten beside his Hermes briefcase, the same briefcase that contained the resignation letter he'd written, but never submitted. "Jin-woo ah," she whispered, using the intimate Korean suffix that had once made him feel alive. "You're destroying everything you built. The stocks, the board meeting tomorrow, your mother's threats." "I don't care about any of it," he interrupted, his English fractured by emotion. 40 billion won? It's just numbers on a screen. But you're real. You made me real. The gate agent announced the final boarding call for São Paulo. Behind the crowd of reporters, Jin-woo caught sight of his assistant Lee Jae-sung, frantically speaking into his phone. The Park Industries emergency board meeting was scheduled in 6 hours. If Jin-woo didn't return, if he didn't end this embarrassing spectacle, as his mother called it, the company would vote him out as CEO by sunrise. Amara pulled her hands free, and Jin-woo felt his world crumble. She picked up her carry-on bag with shaking fingers, then turned back to him one last time. "I love you more than I ever thought possible to love someone," she said in perfect Korean, the language she'd been secretly studying for months. "But I can't be the reason you lose your soul." She walked toward the boarding gate, each step echoing like a gunshot in Jin-woo's chest. The cameras kept flashing. The reporters kept shouting questions. And Park Jin-woo, the man who had never shown weakness, never bent to anyone's will, remained on his knees, watching the only woman who had ever seen his heart disappear into a plane that would take her 20,000 kilometers away. The gate closed with a metallic finality that sounded like the end of everything. But this story doesn't begin here. It begins 6 months earlier, in a small cafe in Hongdae, with a collision that changed 2 lives forever. If the contract of your life came from someone who could destroy you, would you sign it? What happens when a billionaire's heart becomes his greatest vulnerability? Park Jin-woo had never set foot in a Hongdae cafe before. The narrow streets filled with university students and street art were as foreign to him as another planet. His driver had refused to navigate the cramped alleyways, leaving Jin-woo to walk the final 3 blocks to meet his potential graphic designer, a woman whose portfolio had impressed his marketing team enough to warrant this unusual meeting. The cafe itself was everything his sterile corporate world wasn't. Mismatched furniture, plants hanging from macrame holders, and the scent of cinnamon mixing with fresh coffee. He checked his Patek Philippe watch. She was 7 minutes late. In his world, 7 minutes was an eternity of disrespect. "Mr. Park?" a warm voice asked behind him. Jin-woo turned, and his prepared lecture about punctuality died in his throat. The woman standing before him radiated a kind of energy he'd never encountered in Seoul's business circles. Her skin was rich and dark, her smile genuine rather than calculated, and her eyes held an openness that seemed almost dangerous in its honesty. "I'm Amara Santos," she said, extending her hand for a Western-style handshake instead of the customary bow. Sorry I'm late. I got completely lost trying to find this place. Seoul's streets are like a beautiful maze. Jinwoo stared at her outstretched hand for a moment too long. When was the last time someone had touched him without an agenda? He shook her hand, noting the warmth of her palm and the small callus on her index finger from drawing. 7 minutes, he said automatically, then immediately regretted the coldness in his voice. Instead of apologizing or showing fear, the usual responses to his displeasure, Amara laughed. It was a rich, unguarded sound that seemed to fill the small cafe. 7 minutes, huh? In Brazil, we'd call that right on time. But I can see you're not Brazilian. She gestured to his severe black suit. You're definitely the CEO type. Shall we sit? I brought my portfolio, but I also brought something better. She reached into her colorful bag and pulled out a small container. Brigadeiros, Brazilian chocolate truffles. I made them this morning. Consider it an international peace offering for my shocking tardiness. Jinwoo found himself accepting the small chocolate ball, even though he hadn't eaten sugar in 3 years as part of his rigid dietary regimen. The moment it touched his tongue, sweetness exploded across his palate. Not just the chocolate, but something he couldn't identify. Joy, maybe. Spontaneity. He struggled for words. Unexpected. Life's more interesting when it's unexpected, don't you think? Amara said, settling into the worn velvet chair across from him. Now, about this advertising campaign for Park Industries. I've been researching your company, and honestly, I'm fascinated. You've built an empire, but all your marketing feels so safe. Like you're afraid to show any personality. Jinwoo's business mask slipped back into place. Park Industries represents stability and trust. We don't need personality. Everyone needs personality, Mr. Park. Even billion-dollar conglomerates. She opened her portfolio, and Jinwoo found himself leaning forward despite himself. Her designs were unlike anything his marketing department had ever produced. Vibrant, emotional, human. This campaign, she said, pointing to a series of sketches, is about connection. Your company connects people through technology, through opportunities, through innovation. But your current ads make it look like you connect them through boardroom meetings and profit margins. For the next hour, Amara Santos systematically dismantled everything Jinwoo thought he knew about his own company's image. She was brilliant, passionate, and completely unintimidated by his reputation. More unsettling, she seemed to see straight through his carefully constructed CEO persona to something underneath, something he'd forgotten existed. "Why are you in Seoul?" he asked suddenly, interrupting her explanation of color psychology. "Adventure," she said simply. "I wanted to see a part of the world that was completely different from mine. I wanted to challenge myself, maybe fall in love with a new culture. So far it's been..." She paused, looking directly at him. "Surprising." Their eyes met across the small table, and Jinwoo felt something shift in his chest. A warmth that had nothing to do with the coffee. A curiosity that extended beyond business. An attraction that his rational mind immediately tried to suppress. "I'll consider your proposal," he said, closing his leather portfolio with more force than necessary. "Just consider it?" Amara's eyebrows rose. "Mr. Park, I didn't fly 20,000 kilometers to be considered. I came here to create something extraordinary. The question is, are you brave enough to let me?" She stood up, shouldering her bag with a confidence that left Jinwoo momentarily speechless. "I'll give you 3 days to decide. If you choose safe and boring, I understand. But if you choose extraordinary..." She smiled that radiant smile again. "Well, I think you might surprise yourself." She left him sitting alone at the small table, surrounded by the scent of cinnamon and the lingering sweetness of brigadeiros. Jinwoo stared at her portfolio for a long moment, then at the empty chocolate container. For the first time in his adult life, he found himself wondering what it would feel like to choose extraordinary. But extraordinary, he was about to discover, came with a price tag his carefully ordered world might not be able to afford. 3 days passed, and Jinwoo found himself thinking about Amara Santos at the most inappropriate moments. During board meetings, he'd remember her laugh. While reviewing quarterly projections, he'd catch himself wondering what Brazil looked like through her eyes. His assistant, Lee Jae-sung, had noticed his unusual distraction, but was too respectful to comment. On Friday evening, Jinwoo made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of returning to his penthouse after a 16-hour workday, he drove his Maserati back to Hongdae. He told himself it was to discuss the marketing proposal. He told himself it was purely business. He found Amara in the same cafe, but this time she wasn't alone. A young Korean man sat across from her, leaning forward with obvious interest as she sketched something on a napkin. Jinwoo felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. Jealousy was an emotion he'd trained himself to eliminate years ago, yet here it was, hot and unwelcome. "Mr. Park." Amara's face lit up when she spotted him. "You came back." "I wanted to discuss your proposal," he said stiffly, noting how the young man's expression shifted from interest to recognition to fear when he realized who had approached their table. "Of course," the man stammered in Korean, bowing deeply. "I was just leaving. Miss Santos, thank you for the English practice." After he hurried away, Amara gestured for Jinwoo to sit. "English tutoring," she explained. "It helps pay for my extended stay in Seoul. Plus, I love meeting local people. Everyone has such interesting stories." "You're struggling financially?" The question slipped out before Jinwoo could stop it. Amara's smile faltered slightly. "Not struggling. Just being practical. Seoul is expensive, and I want to stay longer than I originally planned." She was hiding something. Jinwoo's years of reading people in business negotiations told him that much. But instead of pressing, he found himself pulling out the contract his legal team had prepared. "I've decided to accept your proposal," he said, sliding the document across the table. "With modifications." Amara read through the contract, her eyebrows rising with each clause. "This is incredibly generous. Almost too generous. What's the catch?" "No catch. I want the campaign done right." "Mr. Park." "Jinwoo." She corrected herself, using his given name for the first time. "This budget could fund my entire design studio for 5 years. Are you sure you understand what you're offering?" The sound of his name in her accent did something strange to his composure. "I always understand what I'm offering." But as the words left his mouth, he realized they weren't entirely true. He was offering her money, yes, but also something more dangerous: access to his world, his time, his carefully guarded attention. "There is one additional requirement," he added, pulling out a second document. "I want to be involved in every aspect of the campaign development. Personal oversight. You want to micromanage me?" There was challenge in her voice, but also amusement. "I want to understand your creative process. Consider it cultural exchange." Amara studied his face with those perceptive eyes. "Okay, but I have conditions too. First, we meet in different places around Seoul. I want to understand the city through local eyes, not just corporate boardrooms. Second, you have to try things my way before defaulting to your way. And third," she paused, smiling, "you have to let me cook for you at least once. Brazilian food, real Brazilian food, not some fusion interpretation. I don't eat outside of my dietary restrictions." Everyone needs to break their own rules sometimes, Jinwoo. Even CEOs. The way she said his name made his defenses crumble just slightly. Fine. But we start Monday, and I expect professional boundaries maintained at all times. Of course. Very professional, Amara agreed, though her eyes sparkled with mischief. Should I bow every time I see you? Call you Sajangnim? Wear a business suit? That won't be necessary. Good, because I look terrible in gray. Despite himself, Jinwoo almost smiled. Almost. They spent the next hour going over project timelines and deliverables, but Jinwoo found himself more interested in the way Amara gestured while talking, the passion in her voice when she described her vision for the campaign, the small scar above her left eyebrow that looked like it had a story behind it. When they finally parted ways outside the cafe, Amara touched his arm lightly, a casual gesture that sent electricity through his entire nervous system. Jinwoo, she said. Thank you for trusting me with this. I won't let you down. See that you don't. But as he watched her walk away into the Seoul night, Jinwoo realized he wasn't worried about professional disappointment. He was worried about something far more dangerous. The possibility that Amara Santos might be the first person in 20 years to see past his armor and find the man he'd buried under layers of corporate necessity. That night, alone in his penthouse overlooking the Han River, Jinwoo found himself doing something he hadn't done since his father's death. He allowed himself to cry. Just one tear, sliding down his cheek as he realized that his perfectly controlled life was about to become beautifully, terrifyingly complicated. Monday morning arrived with unexpected rain, turning Seoul's streets into mirrors reflecting neon signs and rushing umbrellas. Jinwoo stood in the lobby of his corporate tower, checking his watch for the third time. Amara was late again, 15 minutes this time. His phone buzzed with texts from his assistant about the quarterly board meeting, but all Jinwoo could focus on was the empty revolving door. Had she changed her mind about the project? Had his coldness at the cafe driven her away? Sorry! Amara burst through the entrance, shaking rain from her bright yellow raincoat. The subway was delayed, and I couldn't find my T-Money card, and then I got lost in this maze of a building. She stopped mid-sentence, taking in the marble lobby with its soaring ceilings and intimidating corporate art. Wow, this is where you work every day? This is where I live, Jinwoo corrected, then immediately regretted the honesty. I mean, where I spend most of my time. Amara studied his face with concern. When was the last time you went somewhere just for fun? The question caught him off guard. Fun isn't a priority in my schedule. Then we're starting in the wrong place, she said decisively. Come on. Come on where? We have meetings planned, presentations to review. Change of plans. If I'm going to design a campaign that shows the human side of Park Industries, I need to understand what makes Park Jinwoo human. And I don't think I'll find that in a conference room. Before he could protest, she was leading him back toward the exit. Miss Santos, I have responsibilities. Amara, she corrected. And yes, you have responsibilities. But when was the last time you remembered why those responsibilities matter? Something in her tone made him follow. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the way rain had caught in her hair, making her look like she'd stepped out of a different world entirely. Or maybe it was the growing realization that his perfectly ordered life felt increasingly hollow. 20 minutes later, they stood in Namdaemun Market, surrounded by the chaos of vendors selling everything from traditional hanbok to electronic gadgets. The contrast between the corporate tower and this explosion of color and sound was jarring. This is Seoul's heart, Amara said, pulling out her sketchbook. Not the boardrooms or the glass towers. This is where real people live, work, dream. Your customers aren't just profit margins, Jinwoo. They're that grandmother selling kimchi, that young father buying toys for his daughter, that teenager saving for university. Jinwoo watched her sketch with quick, confident strokes, capturing not just the visual chaos but somehow the energy, the humanity of the place. He'd walked through markets like this as a child with his housekeeper, before his mother decided such excursions were beneath his station. "Try this," Amara said suddenly, appearing beside him with a steaming cup of tteok and a mischievous smile. "I don't eat street food. You don't eat sugar either, but you ate my brigadeiros. Come on, live a little." The rice cake was hot, chewy, sweet with red bean paste. As Jinwoo chewed, he realized he was tasting his childhood. Afternoons escaped from tutors and etiquette lessons, small moments of rebellion that had been systematically eliminated from his life. "Good?" Amara asked. "Nostalgic," he admitted. They spent the morning moving through different neighborhoods, Amara sketching and asking questions that forced Jinwoo to see his city through fresh eyes. In Insadong, she bought him traditional tea and asked about his family's history. In Myeongdong, she insisted they try street food and talked about her own childhood in Sao Paulo. "My father died when I was 12, she said casually, while they sat on a bench sharing hotteok. "He was a graphic designer too. My first teacher. He always said design wasn't about making things pretty. It was about making people feel understood." "I'm sorry," Jinwoo said, and meant it. His own father had died when Jinwoo was 25, already groomed to take over the company. But 12? It's okay. It taught me that life is fragile, you know? You can't waste time being safe all the time. Sometimes you have to risk everything for what matters. She looked at him directly when she said it, and Jinwoo felt that unfamiliar tightness in his chest again. Only this time, it wasn't jealousy. It was recognition. The recognition of someone who understood loss, who had learned to carry grief while still choosing hope. "Your turn," Amara said. "Tell me something real about Park Jinwoo. Not the CEO, not the heir to the empire. Just you." Jinwoo hesitated. In his world, vulnerability was weakness. Personal information was ammunition for competitors. But something about the way Amara waited, patient, genuinely interested, made him want to try. "I have panic attacks," he heard himself say. "Started after my father died. During important meetings, sometimes I can't breathe. I take medication, but..." He stopped, horrified at his own words. "But sometimes medication isn't enough," Amara finished gently. "When was the last one?" 3 days ago. During the board meeting where I approved your project." "Because of my project?" "Because of you," he admitted, then immediately stood up. "We should return to the office. I have meetings." "Jinwoo." Her hand caught his wrist, warm and steady. "Thank you for telling me. It was unprofessional. Forget I said anything. I don't want to forget it. It makes you human. And human is what we're going for, remember?" That afternoon, back in his office, Jinwoo watched Amara work with a focus that was beautiful to observe. She'd transformed his sterile conference room into a creative space, sketches and color samples covering every surface. But more than that, she'd transformed something in him. For the first time in years, he found himself looking forward to tomorrow, not because of quarterly projections or acquisition targets, but because he'd get to see how Amara's mind worked, how she saw beauty in unexpected places, how she made him remember who he'd been before duty and responsibility had buried every spontaneous impulse. As evening fell over Seoul, Amara packed up her materials. "Same time tomorrow." "Actually," Jinwoo said, surprising himself again, "would you like to have dinner? Business dinner?" "No, just dinner." Amara's smile was radiant. "I'd love that, but I get to choose the place." "Deal." As she left, Jinwoo realized that for the first time in his adult life, he was about to have dinner without an agenda, without a strategic purpose, without knowing exactly how the evening would unfold. The loss of control should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like the first real breath he'd taken in 20 years. 2 weeks into their collaboration, Jinwoo had broken more of his personal rules than he had in the previous decade. He'd eaten street food, visited jazz clubs, spent entire afternoons in art galleries, and, most shocking of all, had begun leaving his office at reasonable hours. The Park Industries marketing campaign was evolving into something extraordinary under Amara's guidance, but Jinwoo suspected the real transformation was happening to him. He laughed more, worried less about perfect appearances, and found himself genuinely curious about the world outside corporate boardrooms. Tonight they were supposed to finalize the campaign presentation, but instead they found themselves on the rooftop of an abandoned building in Itaewon, sharing takeout bibimbap while Seoul sparkled below them. "How did you find this place?" Jinwoo asked, marveling at the view. "Kaya showed me," Amara said, referring to her best friend who had arrived from New York 3 days earlier. "She has a talent for discovering hidden gems. Says it comes from growing up in Brooklyn. You learn to find beauty in unexpected places." Jinwoo had met Kaya Johnson briefly when she'd stopped by the office. Unlike Amara's warm openness, Kaya had studied him with sharp, analytical eyes, clearly protective of her friend. He respected that loyalty, even as it made him slightly uncomfortable. "What does she think of our working relationship?" he asked. "She thinks you're falling for me," Amara said matter-of-factly, not looking up from her bibimbap. Jinwoo nearly choked on his food. "What?" "She's very observant. Also, she says I'm falling for you, which is..." Amara finally looked at him, her expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. Which might be true. The admission hung in the air between them, charged with possibility and danger. Jinwoo set down his chopsticks, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with anxiety. "Amara, I know," she said quickly. "I know all the reasons it's complicated. Different cultures, your position, the media attention you live with. I know I'm supposed to be professional. But Jinwoo, I've never met anyone who makes me want to be braver just by being around them." Thunder rumbled overhead, and the first drops of rain began to fall. They should have sought shelter, should have gathered their things, and returned to the safety of his apartment or her modest hotel room. Instead, they stayed exactly where they were. "You make me braver too," Jinwoo admitted. "For 3 weeks I've been someone I barely remember being. Someone who takes risks, who cares about things beyond profit margins. Someone who what? Someone who could fall in love." The rain intensified, soaking through their clothes, but neither of them moved. Jinwoo reached out, cupping Amara's face in his hands, water droplets catching on her eyelashes like diamonds. "If I kiss you," he said softly, "everything changes. Everything's already changed, Jinwoo. We just haven't admitted it yet." When their lips met, it felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff simultaneously. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deeper as 3 weeks of suppressed attraction finally found expression. Jinwoo forgot about corporate protocols, forgot about his mother's expectations, forgot about everything except the woman in his arms who had somehow seen past every defense he'd ever constructed. They kissed in the rain until they were both breathless, holding each other as if the moment might disappear if they loosened their grip. "What happens now?" Amara whispered against his lips. "I don't know," Jinwoo admitted. "I've never been here before." They made it back to his penthouse, both soaked and shivering, both aware that they had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Jinwoo gave Amara one of his shirts and made tea while she changed, trying to process the seismic shift in his carefully ordered world. "Your apartment is beautiful," Amara said, emerging from the bathroom in his white dress shirt, which looked infinitely better on her than it ever had on him. "But it feels like a hotel room." "Where's your personality?" Jinwoo looked around at the minimalist decor, the expensive art chosen by an interior designer, the complete absence of anything personal or warm. "I guess I never thought about it." "When we finish this campaign," Amara said, settling beside him on the leather sofa, "I want to help you make this place feel like home. When we finish the campaign, you'll go back to Brazil." The words hung heavy between them, the reality neither had wanted to acknowledge. Amara's visa allowed for a 3-month stay, with 1 month already passed. Their time together had an expiration date, making every moment more precious and more painful. "Maybe I don't have to go back right away," she said quietly. "Amara, be realistic. Your life is in São Paulo. Your family, your friends, your career. My family will survive without me for a while longer. My friends visit each other across continents. And my career." She gestured around his apartment. "Working with Park Industries could open doors I never imagined, but only if you want that too." Jinwoo wanted it more than he'd wanted anything in his life. But want and possibility were different things entirely. "My mother will never approve," he said finally. "Have you ever asked yourself what you would do if her approval didn't matter?" The question hit him like cold water. His entire life had been structured around gaining and maintaining Park Young-suk's approval, following the path she'd laid out for him, becoming the son she needed to secure the family legacy. "I don't know," he admitted. "Then maybe it's time to find out." That night, Amara fell asleep curled against his side on the sofa, her head on his chest, her hand resting over his heart. Jinwoo lay awake watching her breathe, memorizing the peaceful expression on her face, wondering if he was brave enough to fight for something his mother would see as the ultimate betrayal. 3 floors below, in the building's parking garage, a freelance photographer adjusted his telephoto lens and snapped another series of photos through Jinwoo's floor-to-ceiling windows. The images were blurry but unmistakable. Seoul's most eligible bachelor with a woman who definitely wasn't Korean, both clearly intimate, clearly involved. The photographer smiled as he scrolled through the shots on his camera's display. These photos would be worth a fortune to the right media outlet. And tomorrow morning, Park Jinwoo's private life would become very public indeed. The kiss that had felt like the beginning of everything was about to cost Jinwoo 40 billion won and counting. Jinwoo's phone buzzed at 5:47 a.m., jolting him awake from the first peaceful sleep he'd had in years. Amara stirred beside him, mumbling something in Portuguese before settling back against his chest. The call was from Lee Jae-sung, his assistant's voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Sir, we have a situation. The photos, they're everywhere." Jinwoo carefully extracted himself from Amara's sleeping form and moved to his home office, where 3 monitors displayed the morning's entertainment news. His stomach plummeted as he saw the headlines. Park Industries' heir's secret foreign lover. Korea's most eligible bachelor off the market. Who is the mystery woman stealing our crown prince's heart? The photos were intimate, but not scandalous. Jinwoo and Amara sharing takeout on the rooftop, walking hand in hand through Hongdae, the kiss in the rain that had changed everything. But in Seoul's gossip ecosystem, intimacy was scandal enough. "How bad is the stock response?" Jinwoo asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Down 8% in pre-market trading. The board is calling an emergency meeting for this afternoon. And sir," Jae-sung's voice dropped, "your mother is on her way up." Jinwoo closed his eyes. Of all the challenges he'd anticipated in pursuing Amara, facing Park Young-suk's fury had been the most terrifying. "Send her to my office when she arrives. I'll be down in 20 minutes. Sir, she's not coming to the office. She's coming to your apartment. Now. The elevator chimed before Jinwoo could respond, its private access requiring his mother's personal keycard. A privilege he'd never thought to revoke because he'd never imagined needing to. Park Young-suk entered his apartment like a winter storm, her expression glacial as she took in the scene. Amara's dress draped over a chair, 2 empty teacups on the coffee table, the unmistakable evidence of romantic involvement. "Where is she?" his mother asked in Korean, her voice deadly quiet. "Amioni, please, let me explain. Where is she?" "Asleep in the guest room." Jinwoo lied smoothly, hoping to buy time to wake Amara and prepare her for this confrontation. "Good. That gives us time to discuss your immediate resignation from Park Industries before this embarrassment destroys everything your grandfather built." The words hit Jinwoo like physical blows. "You can't be serious." 8% Jinwoo, in one morning. By market close, we'll be lucky if it's only 20%. Do you understand what your indiscretion is costing us? It's not an indiscretion. I care about her. Park Young-suk's laugh was sharp as broken glass. You care about her? A foreign woman who's been in the country for 4 weeks? A woman whose background we know nothing about, whose family connections could be anyone, whose intentions toward you are clearly financial? Her intentions aren't financial. She doesn't even know how much the company is worth. Then she's even more dangerous than I thought. She's deluded enough to believe this is real love. Jinwoo felt anger rising in his chest, hot and unfamiliar. Maybe it is real love. Maybe that's something you've forgotten how to recognize. His mother's face went completely still. For a moment, Jinwoo glimpsed something vulnerable beneath her iron control. Pain, perhaps, or recognition. But it vanished so quickly, he might have imagined it. You will end this relationship immediately, she said. You will issue a public statement explaining that Miss Santos was a short-term business consultant, nothing more. You will marry Lee Min-jung as we discussed last year, and you will restore dignity to this family's name. I won't do that. Then you will resign from Park Industries and forfeit your inheritance. All of it. The board will vote you out by Thursday, and I will support their decision. Aomeoni, there is no negotiation here, Jinwoo. Choose. The empire your family built over 3 generations, or a 3-week infatuation with a woman who will abandon you the moment she realizes what you've sacrificed for her. Before Jinwoo could respond, Amara appeared in the doorway, wearing his shirt and looking devastatingly beautiful despite having just woken up. She took in the tension between mother and son, the newspapers scattered across his desk, and her expression shifted from sleepy contentment to understanding. You must be Mrs. Park, she said in carefully pronounced Korean, bowing respectfully. I'm Amara Santos. I'm honored to meet you. Park Young-suk studied Amara with the cold precision of a corporate hostile takeover. Miss Santos, how convenient that you speak Korean. Have you been studying our language long? A few months. I wanted to understand Jinwoo's world better. His world, Park Young-suk repeated. And what exactly do you think his world consists of? Responsibility, Amara said without hesitation. Loyalty to family, dedication to his employees, the weight of carrying on a legacy that began before he was born. I know what you're thinking, that I'm some opportunist who doesn't understand the gravity of his position. But Mrs. Park, I've watched him sacrifice every personal desire for duty. I've seen how much he loves this company, how much he respects what you've built. I would never ask him to choose between that and me. Wouldn't you? Park Young-suk pulled out her phone and showed Amara the news articles. Because that's exactly what you're doing. Every day you remain in his life, you're costing him everything he's worked for. Amara's face went pale as she scrolled through the headlines, the stock reports, the comments from analysts questioning Jinwoo's judgment. "I didn't know," she whispered. "Of course you didn't." Because he was protecting you from reality. But reality doesn't disappear simply because it's inconvenient. Park Young-suk approached Amara with predatory grace. "I'm going to make you an offer, Miss Santos. $1 million US, transferred to any account you choose, in exchange for returning to Brazil immediately and never contacting my son again." Aomeoni. Jinwoo's voice cracked with shock. "It's business, Jinwoo. Everything is business, including love. Miss Santos, surely you understand that $1 million could transform your life in Brazil. You could start your own design firm, support your family, build the career you claim to want. All you have to do is walk away from a relationship that's destroying the man you claim to love." Amara looked between Jinwoo and his mother, tears building in her eyes. "You think I would take money to leave him? I think you're a practical woman who understands that sometimes love means letting go. The question is whether you love him enough to save him from himself." "Stop," Jinwoo said, moving to Amara's side. "Both of you stop. Amara, you don't have to listen to this. Aomeoni, if you think money can solve this, you understand nothing about what we have. What you have is a fantasy," Park Young-suk said coldly. "And fantasies don't survive in the real world. Miss Santos, you have 24 hours to consider my offer. After that, I will use every resource at my disposal to ensure you understand exactly how unwelcome you are in my son's life." She gathered her purse and moved toward the elevator. "Jinwoo, the board meeting is at 3 o'clock. I suggest you spend the morning deciding whether you want to be my son or a stranger who used to carry our name." The elevator doors closed with a soft chime, leaving Jinwoo and Amara alone in the deafening silence of consequences neither had anticipated. "Is it true?" Amara asked quietly. "About the stock price? The board meeting?" Jinwoo nodded, unable to find words. "And would they really vote you out of your own company?" "It's not my company. It's the family's company. And if the family decides I'm a liability, then we need to end this," Amara said, her voice breaking. "Before you lose everything." "Amara, no." But she was already moving toward her clothes, toward the door, toward the impossible choice between love and destruction. "Your mother was right about one thing," she said as she dressed. "Sometimes love means letting go. Don't do this. Don't let her win. This isn't about winning or losing, Jinwoo. This is about saving you from making a choice you'll regret for the rest of your life." As Amara reached for the door handle, Jinwoo realized that the woman he'd fallen in love with was about to walk out of his life to protect him from the consequences of loving her. And the worst part was, he wasn't sure he was brave enough to stop her. The Park Industries boardroom had always been Jinwoo's sanctuary, a place where logic prevailed over emotion, where strategic thinking trumped personal feelings. But as he sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, facing 12 board members who looked like they were attending a funeral, he realized his sanctuary had become his tribunal. Board chairman Kim Sung-min, his father's oldest friend and supposed ally, cleared his throat with obvious discomfort. "Jinwoo, we've called this emergency session to discuss the situation that has developed over the past 24 hours. The stock price had continued its freefall throughout the morning, closing down 18%, a catastrophic loss that wiped out nearly 40 billion won in market value. The financial news channels were running continuous coverage, with analysts questioning whether Park Industries' leadership had lost touch with Korean values. The situation, Jinwoo repeated calmly, is that I'm in a relationship with someone I care about. Since when is that grounds for corporate intervention? Since your private life began affecting shareholder confidence, replied Director Lee Mi-sun, her voice sharp with disapproval. We're receiving calls from major investors, partnership inquiries being withdrawn, government contracts being reassessed. Park Young-suk sat at the opposite end of the table, her face a mask of professional disappointment. She hadn't spoken to Jin-woo since their confrontation that morning, conducting all communication through intermediaries like a hostile takeover in progress. The board has discussed this matter extensively, Chairman Kim continued, and we believe the most appropriate course of action would be for you to take a temporary leave of absence while this personal situation resolves itself. A temporary leave of absence, Jin-woo repeated. And who would assume CEO responsibilities during this leave? Your mother has graciously agreed to serve as interim CEO, as she did during your transition period after your father's passing. Jin-woo felt the trap closing around him. This had been orchestrated with military precision. The leaked photos, the media coverage, the board meeting called too quickly for him to build his own support. His mother hadn't just threatened him that morning. She'd already moved to eliminate him. I see, he said quietly. And what would be required for me to return from this temporary leave? The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Director Park Hyun-soo, the youngest member and usually Jin-woo's supporter, spoke carefully. The board would need assurance that your personal judgment hadn't been compromised, that your commitment to the company remained absolute. In other words, I would need to end my relationship with Miss Santos. That would certainly demonstrate renewed focus, Chairman Kim admitted. Jin-woo stood up, his decision crystallizing with remarkable clarity. Then I respectfully decline your offer of temporary leave. Jin-woo, his mother warned, if the board lacks confidence in my leadership, then I'll make this simple for everyone. I hereby submit my resignation as CEO of Park Industries, effective immediately. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Park Young-suk's composure cracked for the first time, her face showing genuine alarm. You can't be serious, she said. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. I've spent 34 years being the son you needed, the CEO this company expected, the man everyone else decided I should be. But for the first time, I found someone who sees me as more than a collection of responsibilities and profit margins. Jin-woo, think about what you're saying, Chairman Kim pleaded. This company is your legacy, your birthright. My birthright was supposed to include the freedom to choose my own happiness, Jin-woo replied. But apparently, that clause was never in the contract. He began walking toward the door, then stopped and turned back to face the board. I'll be announcing my resignation publicly within the hour. Miss Santos had nothing to do with this decision. In fact, she tried to talk me out of it. This is my choice, made with full understanding of the consequences. Where will you go? His mother asked, her voice smaller than he'd heard it in years. What will you do? I don't know, Jin-woo admitted. For the first time in my adult life, I genuinely don't know what comes next. And you know what? I'm looking forward to finding out. As he reached the door, Director Park Hyun-soo called out, Jin-woo, wait, maybe there's another solution. Jin-woo paused, hand on the door handle. What if we gave you time? The younger director continued. Not a leave of absence, but a sabbatical. 6 months to resolve your personal situation. The board could delay any major decisions until you return. And Miss Santos, Jin-woo asked, would need to maintain a very low profile, no public appearances together, no social media, no further media attention. If you could manage that? Jin-woo looked around the room, seeing a glimmer of hope in several faces. His mother's expression remained thunderous, but she was only one vote on a 12-member board. I'll consider it, he said finally. But I need to discuss it with Amara first. She deserves to know what she'd be agreeing to. You have 24 hours, Chairman Kim said. After that, we'll need to move forward with permanent leadership decisions. Jin-woo nodded and left the boardroom, his mind racing. A 6-month sabbatical wasn't the future he'd imagined, but it was breathing room. Time to figure out if love could survive in the shadow of an empire, if Amara would be willing to hide their relationship while he found a way to make it sustainable. But first, he had to find her. Because when he'd left his apartment for the board meeting, Amara Santos had been gone, along with every trace that she'd ever been part of his carefully ordered world. His assistant was waiting outside the boardroom with an expression of barely controlled concern. "Sir, Miss Santos called. She wanted me to give you this." Jae-sung handed Jin-woo an envelope with his name written in Amara's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small object wrapped in tissue paper. Jin-woo. By the time you read this, I'll be at the airport. I'm not taking your mother's money. I could never do that. But I also can't stay and watch you destroy everything you've built for a relationship that might not survive the pressure we'd be under. You asked me once what I wanted from life. I wanted adventure, challenge, the chance to fall in love with something new. Mission accomplished on all counts. But I also want you to be happy. And I don't think you can be truly happy if you're always wondering whether you chose the right path. Take the sabbatical if they offer it. Use the time to figure out who you are when you're not trying to be who everyone else needs you to be. If, at the end of that time, you still want to try this, if you still think what we have is worth fighting for, then come find me. I'll be in Brazil, learning to be brave enough to deserve you. All my love, Amara. P.S. I'm keeping the red umbrella. Consider it motivation to come and get it back. Jin-woo unwrapped the tissue paper to find his father's college graduation ring, the one he wore on his right hand, the one Amara had noticed on their second meeting and asked about. He'd told her it represented the weight of legacy, the responsibility of living up to someone else's dreams. She'd given it back to him, and he understood why. So he could decide for himself what legacy he wanted to carry forward. Standing in the hallway of Park Industries, holding a love letter and his father's ring, Jin-woo made the second life-changing decision of the day. He was going to take the sabbatical. And then he was going to Brazil. But first, he had to survive 6 months of being apart from the woman who had taught him that the biggest risk in life wasn't losing everything. It was never being brave enough to try. 3 weeks after Amara's departure, Park Young-suk sat in her son's former office, surrounded by quarterly reports and strategic plans, feeling nothing but hollow victory. The stock price had recovered most of its losses. The board was praising her steady leadership, and Jin-woo had officially begun his sabbatical, spending his days in a modest apartment in Gangnam, apparently writing and doing volunteer work with refugees. It should have been enough. She had protected the family empire, eliminated the threat to their reputation, and secured the company's future. But every morning when she looked in the mirror, Young-suk saw her own mother's face. The same stern expression, the same iron determination, the same willingness to sacrifice personal happiness for family duty. The irony wasn't lost on her. 40 years ago, she had been Jin-woo's age, deeply in love with a man her parents deemed inappropriate. Park Jae-min had been brilliant, passionate, and completely unsuitable. A professor from a middle-class family, with no business connections and no dowry to offer. When Young-suk's parents forced her to choose between love and family obligation, she had chosen duty. She had married the man they selected, built the life they designed, and buried her heart so deeply she sometimes forgot it existed. Now she was doing the same thing to her son, perpetuating a cycle she had sworn to break when Jin-woo was born. Her secretary knocked on the door. "Ma'am, there's a woman here to see you. She says she's a friend of Miss Santos." Young-suk looked up, immediately alert. "Send her in." Kaya Johnson entered the office with the confident stride of someone who wasn't intimidated by corporate power. She was prettier than Young-suk remembered from their brief encounter, but her expression was anything but friendly. "Mrs. Park," Kaya said, declining the offered seat. I'll keep this brief. I'm flying back to New York tomorrow, but I wanted to talk to you before I left. About what, Miss Johnson? About the fact that you destroyed the best thing that ever happened to your son. Young-suk raised an eyebrow. That's a matter of perspective. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you took a man who was finally learning to be happy and convinced him that his happiness was worth less than your stock price. I saved him from making a catastrophic mistake. Did you? Kaya pulled out her phone and showed Young-suk a series of photos. These are from Amara's Instagram account. Private, before you get any ideas. This is her last 3 weeks in Brazil. The photos showed a vibrant woman slowly losing her light. In the first few, Amara was smiling with family. But even then, her eyes looked hollow. By the most recent pictures, she wasn't smiling at all. She's been taking care of her sick mother, Kaya continued, working 16-hour days to pay for medical treatments while trying to rebuild the design business she put on hold to come to Seoul. She hasn't eaten properly in weeks, hasn't slept through the night since she left Korea. But you don't care about that, do you? As long as your precious company is safe. Young-suk studied the photos, recognizing the particular exhaustion that came from carrying too much responsibility alone. It was an expression she knew intimately. She'd worn it herself for 30 years. What do you want from me, Miss Johnson? I want you to understand what you've done. Not just to Amara, but to Jin-woo. Do you know what he's been doing during his sabbatical? Young-suk remained silent. He's been learning Portuguese. Every day. 4 hours a day. He's also been researching graphic design programs in Sao Paulo, visa requirements for long-term residents in Brazil, and the Brazilian business registration process. He's planning to give up everything, not for a company or a family legacy, but for love. Real love. The kind you apparently decided he doesn't deserve. The words hit Young-suk like physical blows. Her son was planning to abandon Korea entirely, to rebuild his life in a foreign country for a woman who might not even want him anymore. He can't be serious. Oh, he's dead serious. And you know what the saddest part is? Amara would never let him do it. She loves him too much to let him sacrifice his entire world for her. So you'll get what you wanted. They'll both be miserable, but separately, and your precious reputation will remain intact. Kaya moved toward the door, then paused. I've known Amara since college, Mrs. Park. She's the strongest, kindest, most genuine person I've ever met. She could have taken your $1 million and disappeared. Instead, she gave up the love of her life to protect him from having to choose between her and his responsibilities. If that's not the kind of woman you want for your son, then you don't deserve either of them. After Kaya left, Young-suk sat alone in the vast office, staring at the photos on her phone. In one image, Amara was sitting beside a hospital bed, holding an elderly woman's hand. Her mother, presumably. The exhaustion on Amara's face was heartbreaking. But there was something else. A fierce protectiveness, a determination to carry whatever burden was necessary. It was exactly the same expression Young-suk had worn when her own husband was dying, when she'd taken over Park Industries while nursing him through his final months, when she'd held the company together through sheer force of will because someone had to be strong enough to survive. For the first time in 20 years, Park Young-suk allowed herself to remember Park Jae-min, not the unsuitable professor her parents had forced her to reject, but the man who had made her laugh, who had seen her as more than a chaebol daughter, who had loved her completely and without reservation. She had chosen duty over love, and spent 40 years wondering if she'd made the right decision. Now she was forcing her son to make the same choice, and for the first time, she wasn't sure it was a choice worth making. That evening, Young-suk did something she hadn't done in decades. She went to the small jazz club in Hongdae, where she'd once spent stolen hours with Jae-min, listening to music and dreaming of a different life. The club was still there, barely changed, still dimly lit with the same intimate atmosphere. She ordered a whiskey, his drink, and sat alone at a corner table, remembering what it felt like to be young and reckless and willing to risk everything for love. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jinwoo. Aomeoni, I'm leaving for Brazil next week. I wanted you to know. I love you, but I can't live the life you've chosen for me anymore. Young-suk stared at the message for a long time, then typed back. We need to talk. Tomorrow. My office. But as she hit send, she realized that tomorrow might already be too late to undo the damage she'd caused. Some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. The question was whether she was brave enough to try. Jinwoo stood in his empty apartment, suitcases packed, Portuguese language books scattered across his coffee table. His flight to São Paulo departed in 3 hours, and he felt simultaneously terrified and more alive than he had in months. The past week had been a whirlwind of preparations. Selling his car, arranging for extended leave from all his board positions, getting his visa approved with the help of a Brazilian immigration attorney. He'd liquidated enough investments to support himself for 2 years while he figured out how to rebuild his life in a new country. His phone had been ringing constantly, board members trying to talk him out of leaving, reporters who'd gotten wind of his travel plans, even a few former business rivals who seemed genuinely concerned about his sanity. But the one call he'd been hoping for hadn't come. Young-suk had requested a meeting the day before, but Jinwoo had declined. He was done allowing his mother to dictate the terms of his happiness. If she wanted to repair their relationship, she could do it without ultimatums or corporate boardrooms. A knock at the door interrupted his final preparations. Jinwoo opened it expecting to find his driver, but instead found Lee Jae-sung holding an envelope and looking uncharacteristically nervous. Sir, I know you said no interruptions, but this came by special delivery an hour ago. The messenger said it was urgent. Jinwoo recognized the handwriting immediately. Amara's distinctive script, more hurried than usual. His heart pounded as he tore open the envelope. Jinwoo, Kaya told me about your plans. Please don't come to Brazil. Not like this. Not when you're running away from your life instead of running toward something better. My mother is getting worse. The treatments aren't working, and I need to be here completely, without the distraction of wondering whether you're sacrificing too much for me. You belong in Seoul, in the world you understand, building the empire you were born to lead. I will always love you. That's exactly why I can't let you destroy yourself for me. Stay in Korea. Find happiness there. Remember me fondly, but let me go. Amara. Jinwoo read the letter 3 times, each reading making his resolve stronger rather than weaker. She was protecting him again, just as she had when she left Seoul. But this time, he wasn't going to let her noble instincts dictate their future. Jae-sung, change of plans. We're not going to Incheon Airport. We're going to the Park Industries building. Sir, I need to have a conversation with my mother. And then I'm getting on that plane to Brazil, with or without her blessing. 20 minutes later, Jinwoo walked into the Park Industries executive floor for the first time in 3 months. The familiar environment felt strange now. Too cold, too formal, too disconnected from anything that mattered. Young-suk was waiting in her office, but she wasn't alone. Chairman Kim sat across from her desk, along with 2 other board members Jinwoo didn't expect to see. Jinwoo, his mother said, standing up. I'm glad you came. I can't stay long. My flight leaves in 2 hours. About that, Chairman Kim interjected. We've been discussing your situation, and we have a proposal. Jinwoo remained standing, his body language making it clear this would be a brief conversation. I'm listening. The board has voted to extend your sabbatical indefinitely, Young-suk said, with full salary continuation and the option to work remotely from anywhere in the world. What's the catch? No catch. You maintain your position as CEO, You keep your equity stake, and you have complete freedom to live wherever and with whomever you choose. Jinwoo stared at his mother, searching for the trap. Why? Young-suk glanced at the board members, who took the hint and quietly left the office. Once they were alone, she moved to the window overlooking Seoul's sprawling cityscape. Do you remember when you were 12, and you asked me why I married your father instead of following my dreams of becoming a pianist? Jinwoo nodded, surprised by the shift in conversation. I told you that sometimes we make sacrifices for the greater good, that personal desires have to come second to family responsibilities. Do you remember what you said to me? I said that didn't sound like a very good way to live. You were right. Young-suk's voice was softer than Jinwoo had heard it in years. I spent 40 years telling myself that I'd made the right choice, that duty was more important than happiness. But watching you these past few months, seeing how you changed when you were with her, how alive you became. She turned to face him directly. Kaya Johnson came to see me yesterday. She showed me pictures of Amara in Brazil. Jinwoo, that young woman is destroying herself trying to take care of her family, the same way I destroyed parts of myself taking care of ours. The same way you've been destroying yourself trying to be the son you thought I needed. What are you saying? I'm saying go to Brazil. Fight for her. Bring her back here if she'll come, or stay there if that's what it takes. But don't spend the next 40 years wondering what if the way I have. Jinwoo felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of tension he'd carried so long he'd forgotten it was there. And the company? Will survive. It survived when I took over from your father. It survived when you took over from me, and it will survive whatever comes next. But Jinwoo... She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out an old photograph. A young woman with Jinwoo's eyes sitting beside a man at a piano. Love doesn't survive neglect. I know that better than anyone. Jinwoo studied the photograph, seeing his mother as he'd never seen her before. Young, radiant, completely in love with someone who wasn't his father. Jae-min, Young-suk said quietly. Park Jae-min. He was a music professor, completely unsuitable by my parents' standards. I chose duty over love, and I've regretted it every day since. What happened to him? He moved to Canada, became a renowned pianist, married someone who appreciated his talent. He sent me a wedding invitation 10 years later. I still have it in my desk drawer, along with every concert program he ever sent me. Jinwoo felt tears building in his eyes. Aomeoni, don't make my mistake, Jinwoo. Don't choose the safe path just because it's expected. Choose the path that leads to the person you want to become. They stood looking at each other across decades of misunderstanding and misplaced priorities. Finally, Young-suk moved toward him and did something she hadn't done since he was a child. She hugged him. Go, she whispered, and don't come back without her. Jinwoo looked at his watch. I'll never make the flight. Young-suk smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her in years. Then it's a good thing I took the liberty of chartering a private jet. It's waiting at Gimpo Airport. You chartered a jet? Jinwoo, I'm sending my son to fight for the love of his life. Did you really think I was going to make him worry about commercial airline schedules? 30 minutes later, Jinwoo was airborne, flying toward Brazil with nothing but 2 suitcases, a heart full of hope, and the red umbrella Amara had left behind, the one she'd told him to come and get back. He was finally ready to choose extraordinary over safe. But first, he had to convince the woman he loved that some bridges were worth crossing, no matter how far the distance or how uncertain the destination. 22 hours later, Jinwoo stood in the chaotic arrivals terminal of São Paulo's Guarulhos airport, jet-lagged and overwhelmed by the sensory assault of a completely foreign world. The Portuguese announcement sounded like music compared to Korean, but he understood none of it. The air was thick with humidity and unfamiliar scents. Tropical fruits, diesel exhaust, something floral he couldn't identify. He'd spent the entire flight rehearsing what he would say to Amara, practicing Portuguese phrases, and trying to imagine how she would react to seeing him. But now, standing in the middle of Brazil's largest city, with no real plan beyond finding her, the magnitude of what he'd done began to sink in. His phone had service, thankfully, and Kaya had provided Amara's address before his departure. The taxi ride through São Paulo's sprawling urban landscape was like traveling through a living painting. Colorful street art covered every available wall. Vendors sold fresh fruit from elaborate displays, and the energy was completely different from Seoul's ordered efficiency. Amara lived in a neighborhood called Vila Madalena, according to the taxi driver's limited English. The streets grew narrower and more residential as they moved away from the city center, lined with small houses painted in vibrant colors that would never be permitted in Seoul's regulated aesthetic. The house was smaller than Jinwoo had expected, a modest 2-story building with peeling paint and a tiny front garden filled with plants he didn't recognize. Through the front window, he could see movement inside. Jinwoo paid the taxi driver and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, clutching the red umbrella and trying to summon courage. 3 months ago, he'd been one of the most powerful men in South Korea. Now he was a stranger in a foreign country, about to interrupt the life of a woman who had explicitly told him not to come. He knocked on the front door. A young man answered, tall, dark-skinned, with Amara's eyes and a protective expression that immediately reminded Jinwoo of Kaya. This had to be Tiago, her younger brother. Você é o Jinwoo? The young man asked in Portuguese, then switched to accented English. You are Jinwoo? Yes. Is Amara here? Tiago studied him for a long moment, taking in the expensive clothes, the exhaustion from travel, the red umbrella. She's at the hospital with our mother. But you should come in. We need to talk. The inside of the house was everything Jinwoo's sterile apartment hadn't been. Warm, lived in, filled with family photographs and colorful artwork. The scent of spices and coffee lingered in the air, and he could hear a television playing Brazilian music in the background. Sit, Tiago said, gesturing to a worn but comfortable sofa. I make coffee. Real Brazilian coffee, not that Korean stuff. While Tiago worked in the small kitchen, Jinwoo studied the photographs covering every surface. Amara at various ages, as a child with pigtails, as a teenager in school uniform, as a young woman graduating from university. But in every picture, she was surrounded by family, her smile radiant and unguarded. She told us about you, Tiago said, returning with 2 small cups of the strongest coffee Jinwoo had ever tasted. About Seoul, about your mother, about why she had to leave. How much did she tell you? Everything. Amara doesn't know how to hide her feelings. When she came back from Korea, she was broken. Not just sad, broken. Like someone had taken all the light out of her. Jinwoo felt guilt twist in his stomach. I never wanted to hurt her. But you did hurt her. And now you're here. And I need to understand why. Are you here because you feel guilty? Because you want to fix something? Or are you here because you finally decided to fight for her? The directness of the question caught Jinwoo off guard. In Korea, such conversations would be approached with elaborate courtesy and subtle implications. But Tiago's bluntness was refreshing, even as it was challenging. I'm here because I can't live without her, Jinwoo said simply. I tried to respect her decision, tried to stay away like she asked. But Tiago, your sister taught me what it means to be truly alive. Everything else, the company, the money, the reputation, it's all just noise compared to how I feel when I'm with her. Tiago nodded slowly. Good answer. But there are things you need to know before you see her. What things? Our mother, Conceição, She has advanced cancer. The treatments are expensive and they're not working very well. Amara has been working 3 jobs to pay for them. Design work during the day, English tutoring in the evenings, and night shifts at a call center. She sleeps maybe 4 hours a night, eats 1 meal a day, and hasn't bought herself anything new since she came back from Seoul. Jinwoo felt his heart break a little more with each detail. The worst part, Tiago continued, is that she blames herself. She thinks if she had stayed in Korea, if she had accepted your mother's money, if she had made different choices, somehow our mother would be getting better care. That's not her responsibility. Of course not. But Amara has always carried everyone else's problems like they were her own. It's who she is. The question is, are you here to add to her burden or to help carry it? Before Jinwoo could answer, the front door opened and Amara walked in, her arms full of grocery bags and her face drawn with exhaustion. She was thinner than Jinwoo remembered, her clothes hanging loose on her frame, her usually vibrant energy dimmed to a flicker. She looked up and saw him sitting on her family's sofa, and the grocery bags slipped from her hands, scattering fruit and vegetables across the floor. Jinwoo? Her voice was barely a whisper. What are you doing here? I came to get my umbrella back, he said softly, standing up and extending the red umbrella toward her. Amara stared at the umbrella, then at his face, and Jinwoo saw the exact moment when her carefully constructed composure crumbled. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she covered her mouth with her hands. You can't be here, she said through her tears. I told you not to come. I told you. You told me a lot of things. Jinwoo interrupted gently. You told me I should stay in Korea, find happiness there, let you go. But Amara, you never asked me what I wanted. What you want doesn't matter if it destroys your life. What if I told you that losing you was destroying my life? They stood looking at each other across the scattered groceries, 3 months of separation and misunderstanding hanging between them like a wall. Finally, Tiago cleared his throat. I'm going to the hospital to check on Mai, he said diplomatically. You two have things to discuss. After Tiago left, Amara bent down to collect the fallen groceries, her movements mechanical and tired. Jinwoo knelt beside her, helping gather oranges and onions, their hands occasionally brushing with electric familiarity. You look exhausted, he said softly. I'm fine. When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours? Amara looked up at him sharply. Tiago told you. He's worried about you. Everyone who loves you is worried about you. And what about everyone who loves you? Your mother? Your company? Your responsibilities in Seoul? Jinwoo sat back on his heels, still holding an orange. My mother gave me her blessing to come here. The company is being run remotely while I figure out where I belong. And as for my responsibilities, he set the orange aside and took her hands in his. My first responsibility is to the woman who taught me that life is more than profit margins and board meetings. Jinwoo, you don't understand. My mother is dying. The medical bills are enormous. I can't be distracted by love? By happiness? By someone who wants to help carry the load you've been carrying alone? Amara pulled her hands away, standing up and moving toward the kitchen. You have no idea what you're talking about. This isn't Seoul, where money solves every problem. This is real life, with real consequences. Then let me learn about real life. Let me help. Help how? You don't speak Portuguese. You don't understand Brazilian healthcare. You don't know anything about you? Jinwoo stood up, following her into the small kitchen. Amara, I spent 22 hours on airplanes thinking about this conversation. I know you're going to list every practical reason why this won't work. I know you're going to try to protect me from making sacrifices for you. But what I need to know is simple. Do you still love me? The question hung in the air between them. Amara gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles white with tension. "That's not fair," she whispered. "Answer the question." "Of course I still love you. I love you so much it feels like drowning sometimes. But love isn't enough, Jinwoo. Love doesn't pay for cancer treatments or visa applications or..." Jinwoo closed the distance between them in 2 steps, cupping her face in his hands and silencing her with a kiss that tasted like tears and hope, and 3 months of desperate longing. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Love isn't enough," he agreed softly. "But it's a beginning. And I'm here to figure out the rest with you, not for you. Together, Amara. The way it was supposed to be from the start." For the first time since he'd arrived, Amara's guard dropped completely. She leaned into his embrace, and Jinwoo felt like he could breathe properly for the first time in months. "You're insane," she mumbled against his chest. "Completely insane. But I'm insane in Brazil with you, which is exactly where I want to be." As they stood holding each other in her family's small kitchen, Jinwoo realized that he'd spent his entire life building walls around his company, his emotions, his heart. But Amara had taught him that the most beautiful architecture wasn't about barriers. It was about bridges. The next morning, Jinwoo woke up on the Santos family's living room sofa, disoriented by the unfamiliar sounds of a Brazilian neighborhood coming to life. Children shouted in Portuguese outside. Roosters crowed despite being in the middle of a major city, and music drifted from various houses. Samba, bossa nova, and sounds he couldn't identify but found unexpectedly comforting. Amara was already awake, moving quietly around the kitchen preparing coffee with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been taking care of everyone else for too long. She looked better than she had the evening before, less fragile, though still carrying the weight of too much responsibility. "Good morning," she said softly, offering him a cup of the strong Brazilian coffee he was beginning to appreciate. "Did you sleep at all?" "A little. The time difference is still confusing my brain." "Welcome to international jet lag. It gets better in a few days." They stood together in comfortable silence, sipping coffee as morning light filtered through the small kitchen window. Jinwoo found himself studying Amara's profile, memorizing the way she looked in her own environment, more relaxed despite her exhaustion, more herself than she'd ever been able to be in Seoul. "Today I meet your mother," he said. Amara's expression tightened slightly. "Jinwoo, I need to prepare you. She's not the woman she was when I left for Korea. The cancer has progressed, and the treatments are hard on her. She's fragile, and she doesn't speak any English. Tiago has been teaching me some basic Portuguese phrases." "When did he do that?" "Last night, after you fell asleep. He's very protective of you, you know. He interrogated me for 2 hours about my intentions." Despite everything, Amara smiled. "That sounds like Tiago. What did you tell him?" "That I intend to marry his sister, if she'll have me, and spend the rest of my life making her happy." The coffee cup slipped in Amara's hands, and Jinwoo steadied it before it could fall. "Jinwoo, I know it's soon. I know we have practical things to figure out. But Amara, I didn't fly halfway around the world to play it safe. I came here to build a life with you, whatever that looks like." Before she could respond, Tiago appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed for the day. "Ready to meet Mai?" he asked Jinwoo. The hospital was a 30-minute bus ride through São Paulo's sprawling landscape. Jinwoo had never taken public transportation before his time with Amara in Seoul, and now he found himself squeezed onto a crowded Brazilian bus, listening to conversations he couldn't understand, surrounded by families heading to work, school, hospitals. It was chaotic and loud and completely overwhelming, but when Amara took his hand as the bus navigated traffic, Jinwoo realized he'd rather be here with her than in the back of a luxury car by himself. The oncology ward was clean, but clearly underfunded. Too many patients in too few rooms, overworked nurses moving between beds with efficient kindness. Amara led him to a semi-private room where an elderly woman lay connected to various machines, her face bearing unmistakable traces of Amara's beauty, despite being ravaged by illness and treatment. "My," Amara said softly, approaching the bed. "I brought someone to meet you." Conceição Santos opened her eyes, the same warm brown as her daughter's, and focused on Jinwoo with obvious curiosity. She said something in Portuguese, and Amara laughed for the first time since Jinwoo had arrived. "She wants to know if you're the Korean prince who stole her daughter's heart," Amara translated. Jinwoo had prepared a careful introduction in Portuguese, but looking at this woman who had raised the person he loved most in the world, formality seemed absurd. Instead, he sat in the chair beside her bed and took her frail hand in his. "Eu amo sua filha," he said in careful Portuguese. "I love your daughter." Conceição's eyes filled with tears. She spoke rapidly to Amara, who blushed and shook her head. What did she say? She said you have kind eyes, and that anyone who would learn Portuguese just to talk to her must truly love me. She also said I should stop being stubborn and marry you before you change your mind. Smart woman. They spent the morning at the hospital, and Jinwoo watched Amara transform in her mother's presence. Despite Conceição's illness, despite the financial stress, despite everything, the love between mother and daughter was radiant and uncomplicated. They teased each other, shared private jokes, and communicated with the kind of emotional intimacy Jinwoo had never experienced in his own family. When Conceição grew tired and needed to rest, they moved to the hospital's small cafe. Over terrible coffee and stale pastries, Tiago explained the situation with brutal honesty. The doctors give her maybe 6 months with the current treatment plan. There's an experimental therapy available in Rio, but it costs more than our family makes in 5 years. Insurance covers almost nothing. How much? Jinwoo asked. It doesn't matter how much, Amara said firmly. We're not discussing this. Amara, no, Jinwoo. I know what you're thinking, and I won't let you pay for my mother's treatment. That's not why you're here, and it's not your responsibility. What if I told you it wasn't about responsibility? What if I told you it was about family? Amara stared at him. We're not family. We could be, if you'll have me. Jinwoo stood up, and in the middle of São Paulo's Hospital das Clínicas cafe, surrounded by worried families and overworked medical staff, he pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket and got down on one knee. Amara Santos, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the small space. You taught me that love isn't about choosing between happiness and responsibility. It's about finding someone worth fighting for through both. You showed me who I could be when I stopped being afraid of my own heart. Will you marry me? The ring was simple. A solitaire diamond that caught the fluorescent light and threw it back in tiny rainbows. Jinwoo had bought it in Seoul before leaving, carrying it across 2 continents and 24 hours of travel, because he'd known, somehow, that this moment would come. The cafe had gone completely quiet. Patients, families, medical staff. Everyone was watching this strange scene of a well-dressed Asian man proposing to a Brazilian woman over terrible coffee and institutional furniture. Amara looked down at him, tears streaming down her face. You're crazy, she whispered. Completely crazy. Is that a yes? It's a yes to marrying you. It's a no to letting you pay for my mother's treatment. What if I told you the treatment isn't a gift? It's a dowry. What if I told you that in my culture, a man is supposed to take care of his wife's family? Is that true? It is now. Amara laughed through her tears and threw her arms around his neck, knocking them both off balance and sending them tumbling to the floor in a tangle of limbs and joy. The cafe erupted in applause and cheers in 3 different languages. As Jinwoo slipped the ring onto Amara's finger, he realized that he'd spent 34 years thinking he understood what family meant. But family wasn't about blood, or business connections, or social obligations. Family was about choosing to show up for the people you loved, no matter how far you had to travel, or how much you had to sacrifice to get there. And for the first time in his life, Jinwoo felt like he was exactly where he belonged. 3 days after the proposal, Amara insisted on showing Jinwoo the reality of her life beyond the comfortable middle-class neighborhood where her family lived. She led him through increasingly narrow streets until they reached a hillside favela where she'd been doing volunteer design work for a community center. "This is important," she said, as they climbed the steep, winding paths between makeshift houses. "If you're going to marry me, if you're going to understand who I really am, you need to see this." The favela was unlike anything in Jinwoo's experience, a sprawling community built on impossibly steep terrain. Houses stacked on top of each other like colorful building blocks, electrical wires strung between buildings in chaotic patterns. It should have felt dangerous or depressing, but instead Jinwoo was struck by the sense of community, the way neighbors called to each other from balconies, children played soccer in narrow alleys, and families gathered on front steps to share meals and conversation. "How long have you been coming here?" he asked, following Amara through the maze of streets. "Since I was in university. I started teaching design skills to kids who couldn't afford art supplies. It turned into something bigger." They arrived at a community center that was clearly the heart of the neighborhood, a converted warehouse filled with computers, art supplies, and dozens of children and teenagers working on various projects. The moment Amara walked in, she was surrounded by enthusiastic greetings in rapid Portuguese. "Amara, você trouxe um namorado coreano!" a teenage girl shouted, pointing at Jinwoo with unabashed curiosity. "English, Anna," Amara said with mock sternness. "Practice your English." "You brought the Korean boyfriend," Anna corrected herself, grinning. "He's very tall and very rich-looking." Jinwoo found himself the center of attention as 24 kids peppered him with questions in a mixture of Portuguese and broken English. They wanted to know about Korea, about Seoul's skyscrapers, about K-pop and Korean dramas, about why he'd come to Brazil. "He came because he loves Amara," said a boy who couldn't be more than 10. "Like in the novellas." "Carlos watches too much television," Amara said, ruffling the boy's hair. But he's not wrong. For the next several hours, Jinwoo watched Amara work with the kids, helping them design logos for local businesses, teaching them about color theory and composition, encouraging their creativity with endless patience and enthusiasm. This was Amara in her element, not the polished professional who'd impressed his marketing team, but the teacher, the mentor, the woman who saw potential in every person she met. "She pays for half the supplies here," a woman named Rosa told Jinwoo in accented English. Rosa was the center's director, a former teacher who'd started the program with nothing but determination and community support. "When she went to Korea, we thought we'd lost her forever. When she came back, she was different, sadder, but she never stopped helping." Different how? Before Korea, Amara talked about traveling the world, building an international career, making a name for herself. After Korea, she just worked. 3 jobs, long hours, no time for dreams. We worried about her. Jinwoo watched Amara helping Carlos design a poster, her face animated with the kind of joy he remembered from their early days in Seoul. What changed her mind about international work? "You did," Rosa said simply. "After you left Korea, she said her heart was in 2 places at once, and she couldn't figure out how to live like that." The conversation was interrupted by Anna, who approached with a portfolio clutched against her chest. "Amara said you're a businessman in Korea," she said to Jinwoo in careful English. "That's right. Could you look at my designs? I want to study graphic design like Amara, but my family says it's not practical." Anna's portfolio was remarkable. bold, colorful designs that captured the energy of the favela with sophisticated technique. Her talent was obvious, but Jin Woo could also see the limitations imposed by lack of resources and formal training. "These are exceptional," he told her honestly. "Have you applied to universities?" "Universities are expensive. My mother works 2 jobs just to keep us in this house." Jin Woo looked around the community center, seeing dozens of talented kids whose potential was constrained by circumstances beyond their control. An idea began forming in his mind, something that would allow him to use his business skills and resources in a way that mattered. "Amara," he said, pulling her aside, "what if there was a way to help kids like Anna get proper training? What if we could create scholarships, or partner with universities, or even start our own programs?" "Jin Woo, that would cost—" "I don't care what it would cost. Look around you. Look at what these kids could accomplish with the right opportunities. Look at what you're already accomplishing here with almost no resources." Amara followed his gaze, seeing the community center through his eyes, not as a humble volunteer project, but as a launching pad for dreams that deserved support. "You're talking about starting a foundation. I'm talking about building something that matters. Together." That evening, they sat on the roof of Amara's house, sharing a bottle of wine and looking out over São Paulo's endless sprawl of lights. The city was different from Seoul's ordered beauty, but Jin Woo was beginning to understand its appeal. The energy, the creativity, the sense that anything was possible if you were willing to work for it. "Tell me about your father," Jin Woo said suddenly. "My father? Why?" "Today, watching you with those kids, I saw something familiar. The way you teach, the patience you have, the way you see potential in everyone. It reminded me of something, but I couldn't figure out what." Amara was quiet for a long moment, swirling wine in her glass. "My father used to say that design wasn't about making pretty pictures. It was about solving problems, about making people's lives better in small ways. He said the most important thing a designer could do was help people tell their own stories. That's what you're doing at the community center. That's what I'm trying to do everywhere. It's why I was so excited about working with Park Industries. I thought we could tell better stories about business, about purpose beyond profit." Jin Woo reached for her hand. "What if we still could?" "What do you mean?" "What if Park Industries didn't just do business in Korea? What if we expanded into Brazil, into community development, into programs that actually made a difference in people's lives? What if we built something that honored both of our fathers' legacies?" Amara stared at him. "You're talking about completely changing your company's focus. I'm talking about evolving it, growing it into something bigger than quarterly earnings and stock prices. Something that would make those kids in the favela see business as a force for good instead of just another system that ignores them. Your mother would never approve." Jin Woo pulled out his phone and showed Amara a series of text messages he'd received throughout the day. "Actually, she's been very supportive. Look." The texts were from Young Suk, filled with questions about Brazilian business law, requests for photos of the community center, and expressions of genuine interest in Jin Woo's foundation idea. The final message read, "Your father would be proud. Build something worthy of the woman you love." "She's really changed," Amara said, scrolling through the messages. "People change when they realize what they're about to lose. My mother spent 40 years regretting choosing duty over love. She doesn't want me to spend 40 years regretting the opposite choice." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle below them. Jin Woo realized that for the first time in his life, he wasn't planning 5 years ahead, wasn't calculating risks and returns. He was simply present in this moment, with this woman, building something that felt more like destiny than strategy. "So," Amara said finally, "we're going to revolutionize international business from a favela in São Paulo. We're going to start here and see how far love can take us." But even as Jinwoo spoke the words, his phone buzzed with an urgent call from Seoul, a call that would threaten to destroy everything they were building before they'd even had the chance to begin. The call came at 2 a.m. São Paulo time, jolting Jinwoo awake from the deepest sleep he'd had in months. The caller ID showed Chairman Kim's number, and Jinwoo's stomach immediately clenched with dread. Emergency calls from Korea never brought good news. "Sir." Chairman Kim's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "We have a situation. Choi Min-ho has called a shareholder revolt. He's convinced 3 major investors that your extended absence proves you're unfit to lead. They're demanding an immediate board vote to remove you permanently." Jinwoo sat up in bed, his mind instantly shifting into crisis mode. What's his evidence? Photos from Brazil. You at the hospital, at the favela, the proposal in the cafe. He's spinning it as abandoning your responsibilities for a personal relationship. The narrative is that you've lost focus entirely. When is the vote? Tomorrow at 9 a.m. Seoul time. If you're not here to defend yourself, the board will have no choice but to consider you in breach of your fiduciary duties. Jinwoo looked at Amara sleeping peacefully beside him, her engagement ring catching the moonlight streaming through the window. Waking her meant explaining that their plans for the foundation, for building a life together, might be over before they'd truly begun. "I'll be on the next flight," he said quietly. "Sir, even if you leave immediately, you won't arrive until after the vote concludes. The time zones work against us." Jinwoo closed his eyes, calculating distances and flight times. Chairman Kim was right. By the time he reached Seoul, his fate would already be decided by a board that saw his commitment to Amara as abandonment of duty. "Then we'll handle it remotely. Set up a video conference for the vote. Min-ho is arguing that your physical absence from Korea for 3 months demonstrates exactly his point about abandoning responsibilities. A video call won't help your case." "What will help my case?" There was a long pause. "Returning immediately and ending the relationship publicly. Making a clear statement that personal desires won't interfere with corporate leadership again. The familiar ultimatum. Choose the empire or choose love." Jinwoo had thought he'd moved beyond such impossible decisions, but apparently, some battles had to be fought more than once. "I need an hour to think," he said finally. "Sir, every hour you delay makes Min-ho's argument stronger." "1 hour, Chairman Kim. I'll call you back." Jinwoo ended the call and stared at the ceiling, wrestling with a choice he'd hoped never to face again. Beside him, Amara stirred and opened her eyes. "Who was calling so late?" she asked sleepily. "Seoul. There's a problem with the company." Amara immediately sat up, fully alert. "What kind of problem?" Jinwoo explained the situation, watching her expression shift from confusion to understanding to heartbreak. By the time he finished, tears were streaming down her cheeks. "You have to go," she said quietly. "Amara, you have to go. And you have to end this. Us. Publicly, like they want." "I won't do that." "Jinwoo, look at me." She turned to face him directly, her voice steady despite the tears. "That company employs thousands of people. It supports their families, their dreams, their futures. You can't let it be destroyed because of me. It won't be destroyed. Min-ho just wants control. And what if he gets it? What if he runs it into the ground trying to prove he's better than you? What if all those people lose their jobs because you chose love over responsibility? What if I choose responsibility over love and spend the rest of my life regretting it? Then you'll be like your mother was," Amara said softly. "And maybe that's not the worst thing. Maybe sometimes the people we love most are the ones we have to let go to protect them." They sat in silence as the weight of impossible choices settled around them. Outside, São Paulo was beginning to stir. Early morning vendors setting up stalls, buses starting their routes, the city coming alive with the energy that had captivated Jinwoo since his arrival. "There might be another way," Jinwoo said suddenly. "What way? What if I don't just defend myself to the board? What if I go on the offensive? What if I expose Minho's real motivations, his attempts to sabotage the company for personal gain? What evidence do you have?" "Enough. The leaked photos, the coordinated media campaign, the suspiciously well-timed shareholder revolt. Minho's been planning this for months." Amara looked hopeful for the first time since the phone call. "Could that work?" "Maybe. But it means fighting dirty. And I've never been good at that kind of corporate warfare." "Then it's time to learn." They spent the next 3 hours preparing for battle. Jinwoo called his most trusted allies on the board. Amara helped him craft a presentation that told their story honestly while exposing Minho's manipulations. And together they built a strategy that had nothing to do with choosing between love and duty. Instead, they chose to fight for both. As dawn broke over São Paulo, Jinwoo prepared for the most important video conference of his life, one that would determine not just his corporate future, but whether love could survive in a world that demanded impossible sacrifices from those brave enough to pursue it. "Whatever happens," Amara said, helping him adjust his tie via their laptop camera, "I want you to know that loving you has been the greatest adventure of my life." "Past tense?" Jinwoo asked with a slight smile. "Present continuous tense," she corrected, returning his smile. "Loving you is the greatest adventure of my life, and if we lose everything fighting for it, at least we'll lose it together." As Seoul connected to the video call that would decide their fate, Jinwoo realized that sometimes the biggest risk wasn't choosing between love and responsibility. Sometimes the biggest risk was daring to believe you could have both. The Park Industries boardroom had never felt more like a gladiatorial arena. Jinwoo's image filled the large screen at the head of the table, broadcasting from Amara's family's modest living room in São Paulo. The contrast was intentional and symbolic. The CEO who had supposedly abandoned his luxury lifestyle for love, defending himself from 10,000 miles away. Choi Min-ho sat at the opposite end of the table from the screen, his confident smile betraying his certainty of victory. He'd spent weeks building his case, and the evidence seemed damning. Jinwoo's extended absence, the public relationship with a foreign woman, the apparent prioritization of personal desires over corporate responsibilities. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chairman Kim began formally, "we're here to address concerns about CEO Park Jin-woo's recent conduct and its impact on company performance and reputation." "Before we begin," Jin-woo's voice came clearly through the speakers, "I'd like to present new information that I believe is relevant to these proceedings." Minho's smile faltered slightly. "This isn't a trial, Jin-woo. It's a business meeting about your fitness to lead." "Exactly. And part of fitness to lead is the ability to identify threats to the company, both external and internal." Jinwoo's presentation began with financial data, detailed analysis showing that despite the temporary stock decline following the media coverage of his relationship, Park Industries' long-term performance had actually improved during his sabbatical. New contracts, international partnerships, and innovative projects had all moved forward under the remote leadership structure. The stock price recovered completely within 6 weeks, Jinwoo explained, and our Q3 earnings exceeded projections by 12%. If my personal life had truly damaged the company, these numbers would tell a different story. Director Park Hyun-soo leaned forward with interest. "These are impressive figures. How do you account for the continued success during your absence?" "Simple. I built systems and hired people capable of excellence. A good CEO delegates. A great CEO makes himself replaceable in daily operations while remaining essential for strategic vision." But Jinwoo wasn't finished. The next slide showed phone records, financial transactions, and a timeline that painted a very different picture of recent events. "However," Jinwoo continued, I've discovered that certain recent challenges to Park Industries weren't the result of my personal choices. They were the result of deliberate sabotage. The room went completely silent. Minho's face had gone pale, but he maintained his composure. "That's a serious accusation," Chairman Kim said carefully. "It is, and I have serious evidence." Jinwoo's presentation revealed a pattern of coordinated attacks, leaked confidential information to competitors, strategic timing of negative media coverage, and financial backing for the hostile takeover attempt that came from sources linked to Minho's personal investments. The photographer who took the initial pictures of Amara and me received payment from a shell company registered to Minho's cousin. The media outlets that ran the most damaging stories received exclusive access to internal Park Industries documents that only 5 people in this room had access to. Minho stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You're deflecting responsibility for your own poor judgment." "Sit down, Minho." Park Young-suk's voice cut through the room like ice. She had remained silent throughout the meeting, but now her eyes were fixed on the man who had tried to destroy her son's future. Let him finish. The final piece of Jinwoo's evidence was the most damaging. Recorded phone calls between Minho and 3 major shareholders, calls in which he explicitly stated his plan to use Jinwoo's relationship to force him out of the company. In this recording from 2 weeks ago, Jinwoo played the audio. You'll hear Minho explaining how he intends to use the foreign girlfriend situation to finally get rid of that boy and take control of what should have been mine years ago. Minho's voice filled the boardroom, clear and unmistakable. The Brazilian woman is perfect. She gives us everything we need to paint Jinwoo as emotionally compromised and unfit for leadership. By the time I'm finished, the board will beg me to take over. The silence following the recording was deafening. Minho looked like a trapped animal, his carefully constructed facade crumbling in real time. "Where did you get this recording?" he demanded. "From someone who was tired of watching you try to destroy the company from within," Jinwoo replied calmly. "Someone who believes Park Industries deserves better than a CEO who would sabotage his own colleagues for personal ambition." Chairman Kim cleared his throat, his discomfort obvious. "Minho, do you have a response to these accusations?" This is entrapment. Those recordings are taken out of context. The context," Young-suk interrupted, "is that you've been systematically undermining my son and this company for your own gain. The question now is whether we press charges for corporate espionage or simply accept your resignation." The vote that followed wasn't even close. Minho was removed from the board unanimously, and Jinwoo's position as CEO was reconfirmed with full support for his remote leadership arrangement. But as the meeting concluded, Jinwoo realized that winning this battle meant very little if he lost the war for his personal happiness. Through the screen, he could see Amara in the background of his video feed, and her expression was one of quiet devastation. After the board members disconnected, Young-suk remained on the call. "Well done, my son. Your father would have been proud of how you handled that." "Would he have been proud of the cost?" Jinwoo asked. "What cost?" "Look behind me, Amioni. Look at Amara's face. She thinks this proves that loving me will always mean she's a liability, that our relationship will always be a weapon someone can use against me." Young-suk studied Amara's image on her screen, the woman who had been brave enough to walk away once to protect Jinwoo, who looked ready to do it again. "Then prove her wrong," Young-suk said simply. "You've won the boardroom. Now win her heart back." "How?" "The same way your father won mine, even after my parents forced us apart. Show her that love isn't a liability. It's the only thing that makes power worth having." As the call ended, Jinwoo turned to face Amara, who was sitting quietly on the sofa, her hands folded in her lap. "We won," he said. "You won," she corrected. "And you won by proving that I'm exactly what your enemies said I was. A distraction, a weakness they could exploit. Amara, that's not... It is, Jinwoo. And the next time someone wants to hurt you, they'll come for me again. They'll come for us. Is that really the life you want? Jinwoo knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. It's the only life I want, but only if you're brave enough to want it too. The question hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Would love be strong enough to survive in a world that saw it as a vulnerability rather than a strength? The answer would determine not just their future, but whether two people from different worlds could build something stronger than the forces trying to tear them apart. 2 days after the board meeting victory, Jinwoo sat in the Santos family's small garden, watching Conceição tend to her plants despite her illness. The chemotherapy had made her weak, but she insisted on maintaining her small patch of green life in their concrete world. She does this every morning, Amara said, joining him on the wooden bench her father had built years ago. They do need her. Just like you need me, and I need you. Amara had been distant since the board meeting, withdrawing into the protective shell she'd built around her heart. Jinwoo understood. She'd watched him fight a corporate war where their love was used as ammunition, and she couldn't unsee that reality. Jinwoo, she said quietly, I've been thinking about what happened in Seoul. And I think we need to be realistic about what this means. You defeated Minho this time, but there will be other Minhos. Other people who see our relationship as your weakness. Other battles where loving me becomes a liability. Jinwoo turned to face her directly. So what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe we should end this before it gets worse. Before someone finds a way to use our love against you that you can't defend against. You want to give up? I want to protect you. From what? From being happy? From having someone who loves me enough to walk away if she thinks it's best for me? Tears gathered in Amara's eyes. From losing everything that matters to you. Amara, look at me. Jinwoo waited until she met his gaze. You are everything that matters to me. The company, the money, the reputation. They're just tools. But you're the reason I want to use those tools to build something meaningful. But if I'm constantly a target, then we deal with it together. We get better security, better lawyers, better strategies. We don't surrender to people who want to use love as a weapon. Before Amara could respond, Tiago appeared in the garden doorway with Jinwoo's phone in his hand. It's your mother, he said. She says it's important. Youngsuk's face appeared on the screen, but she wasn't calling from her office. She was sitting in what looked like a hotel room, and her expression was serious but not alarmed. Jinwoo, I'm in Sao Paulo. What? Where? I landed an hour ago. I'm at the Copacabana Palace. We need to talk. All three of us. You, me, and Amara. Can you come? 2 hours later, they sat in the elegant lobby of one of South America's most prestigious hotels, an unlikely trio navigating cultural and emotional territory that none of them had ever explored before. Miss Santos, Youngsuk began in carefully pronounced English. I owe you an apology. Amara looked startled. Mrs. Park, you don't... I do. When I offered you money to leave my son, I was acting out of fear. Fear that he would make the same mistakes I made, that he would choose passion over pragmatism and regret it later. But watching him fight for you, watching him become the kind of leader who can win corporate battles and still prioritize love, I realized I was wrong. About what? About thinking that love and success are mutually exclusive. Your relationship doesn't make Jinwoo weak. It makes him stronger. It gives him something worth fighting for beyond just maintaining what already exists. Jinwoo reached for Amara's hand, squeezing gently. Aomeoni, what are you really saying? I'm saying that I want you to come home to Seoul. Both of you. Together. But the media attention, the corporate politics, Will be managed. I've spent the last 2 days meeting with our public relations team, our legal department, and our board of directors. We're prepared to announce Park Industries' expansion into Brazil, with Amara as our Director of International Community Development. Amara stared at her. What? The foundation you and Jinwoo discussed. We're making it real. A $50 million commitment over 5 years to education and development programs throughout Latin America, starting with the favela where you volunteer. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership. Park Industries needs someone who understands how to build bridges between cultures, how to make corporate resources serve community needs. Someone who can help us become the kind of company that creates value beyond just profit margins. Jinwoo felt something shift in his chest, the same feeling he'd had in the hospital cafe when Amara accepted his proposal, the sense that impossible things were suddenly becoming inevitable. There's more, Young-suk continued. I've also arranged for your mother's treatment, the experimental therapy in Rio, plus the best oncology team in South America. Park Industries' medical insurance will cover everything. Amara's composure finally cracked completely. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed, not with sadness, but with overwhelming relief and gratitude. Why? She asked through her tears. Why are you doing this? Because 40 years ago, I was forced to choose between love and family duty. I chose duty, and I spent 4 decades wondering if I made the right decision. When I saw my son willing to give up everything for you, I realized the answer. Duty without love is just sophisticated slavery. But love with purpose, love that builds something beautiful, that's what makes life worth living. Young-suk reached into her purse and pulled out an old photograph, the same one Jinwoo had seen in her office, showing her with the pianist she'd never married. This is Park Jae-min, she said to Amara. The man I should have fought for. He died last year, alone, successful, but alone. I don't want Jinwoo to wonder for 40 years whether he chose correctly. I want him to know he chose love and found a way to make it work. They sat in the elegant hotel lobby. 3 people from different generations and cultures, bound together by the understanding that love wasn't a luxury or a weakness. It was the foundation upon which everything else worth building had to rest. So, Jinwoo said finally, are you ready to come home with me? To Seoul? To a life where we build something extraordinary together? Amara wiped her tears and smiled. The radiant, unguarded smile that had first captured his attention in a Hongdae cafe. I'm ready, she said. But first we have a wedding to plan. And this time I want your mother to help. Young-suk's smile was the brightest Jinwoo had ever seen from her. I thought you'd never ask. As they left the hotel together, Jinwoo realized that sometimes the greatest victory wasn't winning the battle. It was convincing everyone involved that there had never been a war in the first place. Love, it turned out, was the ultimate corporate strategy. 3 months later, Jinwoo stood in the arrivals terminal of Incheon Airport, his arm around Amara as they faced the wall of camera flashes and shouted questions from the Korean media. But this time, the attention felt different, not like an invasion, but like a celebration. The headlines had been building for weeks. Park Industries announces major Brazil expansion. CEO's fiancé to lead international development. Korean-Brazilian partnership could change corporate philanthropy. Mr. Park! Miss Santos! How does it feel to be back? A reporter called out in English. It feels like coming home, Amara answered confidently, her Korean pronunciation much improved after months of intensive study. I'm excited to bring everything I learned in Brazil to our work here in Seoul. The press conference that followed was unlike anything in Park Industries' corporate history. Instead of the usual dry financial announcements, Jinwoo and Amara presented a vision for business that prioritized community impact alongside profit margins. They showed videos from the São Paulo favela, where construction had begun on a new design school, funded by Park Industries, but operated by local community leaders. This isn't charity, Jinwoo explained to the gathered media. This is investment in human potential. When we give people the tools to tell their own stories, to build their own futures, everybody wins. Miss Santos, a Korean reporter asked, some critics say you're using your relationship with CEO Park to promote your personal agenda. How do you respond? Amara's answer was calm and confident. I'd say those critics don't understand that personal and professional growth aren't mutually exclusive. Jinwoo became a better CEO when he learned to see business as more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. I became a better designer when I learned to think globally while acting locally. Our relationship didn't compromise our professional judgment, it enhanced it. Back at the Park Industries building, the transformation was visible immediately. The sterile corporate art had been replaced with pieces from Brazilian and Korean artists, creating visual bridges between cultures. The executive floor included a new community outreach center, where local nonprofits could present proposals for partnership programs. It's like a completely different company, Lee Jae-sung observed, as he briefed Jinwoo on the changes that had occurred during his final month in Brazil. Employee satisfaction is at an all-time high. Our international partnerships have doubled, and the stock price has reached record levels. What about the board? Completely supportive. Especially after the Brazil expansion announcement generated more positive media coverage than Park Industries has received in the past decade combined. That evening, Jinwoo and Amara stood on the rooftop of his penthouse, now their penthouse, looking out over Seoul's glittering skyline. The apartment had been transformed during their absence, filled with personal touches that made it feel like a home rather than a museum. Photographs from Brazil, plants that Conceição had insisted they bring to Korea, artwork from the favela community center. Do you miss it? Jinwoo asked. São Paulo? Every day. But I don't miss feeling like I had to choose between my dreams and my family. Here, I can do work that matters while being with the person I love. That's not something I ever thought was possible. What about the cultural adjustment? Seoul is so different from Brazil. Amara laughed, the sound carrying across the city lights. Jinwoo, 6 months ago you were a workaholic CEO who had never eaten street food or taken public transportation. If you can learn to be human, I can learn to be Korean. You don't have to become Korean. You just have to become you here. And who is that exactly? The woman who taught me that bridges aren't just about architecture. They're about connection. The woman who showed me that the most important business metric isn't profit margin. It's lives changed. Their wedding was planned for the following spring, a ceremony that would blend Korean and Brazilian traditions in ways that honored both cultures, without compromising either. Young Suk had thrown herself into the planning with enthusiasm that surprised everyone, especially herself. I never had the wedding I wanted, she'd confided to Amara during one of their planning sessions. But I can make sure you have the wedding you deserve. As they prepared for bed in their transformed apartment, Jinwoo reflected on how much had changed since that first collision in the Hongdae Cafe. He'd learned to see success as more than corporate achievement, learned to value connection over control, learned that the biggest risk in life wasn't losing everything. It was never being brave enough to fight for what mattered. Jinwoo? Amara's voice was soft in the darkness. Yes? Are you happy? The question was simple, but the answer represented a fundamental shift in how Jinwoo understood his own life. I'm not just happy, he said. I'm complete. For the first time in my life, I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be, with exactly the person I'm supposed to be with, doing exactly the work that matters. Even when it's complicated? Especially when it's complicated. Easy love isn't worth having. Love that survives corporate sabotage and cultural differences and family pressure. That's the kind of love that changes the world. As Seoul hummed to life around them, Jinwoo realized that his story had never been about choosing between love and responsibility. It had been about learning that the greatest responsibility was to love completely, courageously, and without compromise. The empire he'd built was stronger than ever. But more importantly, the bridge he'd built to Amara's heart had become the foundation for everything else worth constructing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove that business could be a force for good, new ways to demonstrate that love wasn't a liability, but the ultimate strategic advantage. But tonight, he was simply a man who had found his way home. 1 year later, the morning of Jinwoo and Amara's wedding dawned clear and bright over Seoul, with spring cherry blossoms providing a perfect backdrop for what promised to be the social event of the year. But in the bridal suite of the Shilla Hotel, Park Young-suk sat alone with her son's fiancé, sharing a moment that neither woman had expected when they first met. "Are you nervous?" Young-suk asked, carefully adjusting Amara's hanbok, a stunning fusion of traditional Korean silk with Brazilian-inspired embroidery that represented both cultures beautifully. "Terrified," Amara admitted with a laugh. "Not about marrying Jinwoo, but about everything else. The ceremony, the media attention, the expectations of being married to Korea's most eligible bachelor. You know what I was thinking about this morning?" Young-suk said, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from the silk. "My own wedding day. I was terrified too, but for different reasons." "What reasons?" "I was marrying a good man who would take care of me, provide for me, give me a respectable life. But I wasn't marrying the man I loved. I was 23 years old, and I was already settling for safety instead of pursuing happiness." Amara turned to face her future mother-in-law directly. "Do you regret it?" "I regret not fighting harder for what I wanted. But I don't regret Jinwoo's father entirely. He was a kind man who deserved better than a wife who never stopped mourning her first love. And without him, I wouldn't have Jinwoo, and Jinwoo wouldn't have found you." Young-suk moved to the window, looking out over Seoul's bustling streets where wedding guests were already gathering. "When I first met you, I saw everything I was afraid of. Passion, unpredictability, the kind of love that makes people do irrational things. I thought that kind of love was dangerous. And now? Now I think the opposite. I think rational love, love that's calculated and careful and convenient, is what's dangerous. It creates marriages like mine was, functional but hollow. What you and Jinwoo have, it's messy and complicated and sometimes inconvenient, but it's real. And real love creates real happiness." There was a soft knock at the door, and Kaya entered wearing her maid of honor dress, an elegant design that complemented Amara's handbook perfectly. "Ladies, we have a situation," she announced with the tone of someone who thrived on solving problems. "The Brazilian side of the family has arrived, and they've brought instruments. Lots of instruments. The hotel staff doesn't know what to do." Amara laughed, the sound bright and unworried. "That would be my cousin Miguel and his samba group. They've been planning to serenade Jinwoo for months." "In the middle of a traditional Korean ceremony?" Young-suk asked. "Actually," Amara said with a mischievous smile, "I was hoping we could blend some Brazilian music into the reception. Music is the universal language after all." Young-suk considered this for a moment, then surprised both younger women by smiling broadly. "You know what? Let's do it. Let's have the kind of wedding that celebrates everything we are instead of what we're expected to be." An hour later, the ceremony itself was a masterpiece of cultural fusion. Jinwoo, resplendent in traditional Korean formal wear, waited at the altar as Amara walked down the aisle to a subtle blend of classical Korean music and Brazilian bossa nova. The ceremony included elements from both traditions, tea ceremonies and samba rhythms, formal bows and warm embraces, ancient rituals and contemporary vows. When it came time for Jinwoo and Amara to exchange personal vows, they spoke in both Korean and Portuguese, creating a linguistic bridge that brought tears to eyes throughout the audience. "Amara," Jinwoo said in Korean, then repeated in English for the international guests. "You taught me that the bravest thing a person can do isn't to protect what they have, but to risk it all for something better. You showed me that love isn't a weakness to be managed, but a strength to be celebrated. Today I promise not just to love you, but to keep learning from you, keep growing with you, and keep building bridges to whatever dreams we haven't even imagined yet." "Jinwoo," Amara replied, her voice steady despite her tears. "You showed me that home isn't a place. It's the person who sees all of you and chooses to stay anyway. You taught me that the biggest adventures aren't about traveling to new countries, but about becoming new versions of yourself, with someone who makes you braver than you knew you could be. I promise to keep surprising you, keep challenging you, and keep loving you even when it's complicated." The reception that followed was unlike anything Seoul had ever seen. Traditional Korean performances shared the stage with Brazilian musicians. Kimchi sat beside feijoada on the buffet tables, and guests moved seamlessly between formal Korean toasts and exuberant Brazilian dancing. Young-suk found herself in the middle of it all, learning samba steps from Amara's aunt while teaching Korean card games to Brazilian cousins. At one point, she caught sight of herself in a mirror, laughing, dancing, fully present in a moment of pure joy, and barely recognized the woman looking back at her. "Having fun?" Jinwoo asked, appearing beside his mother with 2 glasses of champagne. "I'm having the time of my life," she admitted. "Is this what happiness feels like? This is what happens when you stop being afraid of it." They watched Amara teaching a group of Korean businessmen how to dance foro, her laughter infectious as she guided their clumsy but enthusiastic attempts at Brazilian rhythm. "She's remarkable," Young-suk said. "I understand now why you were willing to risk everything for her. The funny thing is, I didn't risk everything. I gained everything. The company is more successful than ever. Our family is closer than it's been in years, and I wake up every morning excited about what we're building together." "What are you building?" "A life that matters. A business that serves people instead of just using them. A love that makes both of us better than we could have been alone." As the evening wound down, Young-suk stood with the newlyweds on the hotel's garden terrace, looking out over the city lights of Seoul. The wedding had been a perfect metaphor for what Jinwoo and Amara had accomplished, taking 2 different worlds and creating something beautiful from their combination. "I have a confession to make," Young-suk said to both of them. "When I first offered you money to leave Amara, it wasn't just about protecting Jinwoo from making a mistake. It was about protecting myself from having to admit that I had made one." "What mistake?" Amara asked gently. "The mistake of choosing fear over love, safety over adventure, what other people expected over what my heart wanted. Watching you 2 fight for each other forced me to confront 40 years of wondering what if. It's not too late, you know," Jinwoo said quietly. "To stop wondering what if and start asking what now." Young-suk smiled, and for the first time in decades, it was a smile full of possibility rather than resignation. "You're right. Maybe it's time for this old woman to take some lessons in being brave." As fireworks lit up the Seoul sky, a surprise finale arranged by Tiago and executed with typically Brazilian flair, the 3 of them stood together, no longer divided by cultural differences or generational expectations, but united by the understanding that love wasn't something to be managed or contained. It was something to be celebrated, protected, and allowed to grow into whatever beautiful, complicated, extraordinary form it chose to take. The Park dynasty would continue, but it would be transformed, not by abandoning its values, but by expanding them to include the radical idea that business could be personal, success could be shared, and love could be the foundation for everything worth building. As Jinwoo kissed his new wife under the Seoul stars, surrounded by family and friends from 2 continents, he realized that some bridges weren't built to connect different places. They were built to connect different possibilities for what life could be. 6 months after the wedding, Park Industries was preparing to announce its most ambitious project yet, a global network of community development centers that would replicate the success of the São Paulo program in 12 cities across 3 continents. The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m. Seoul time, with simultaneous broadcasts to major media markets worldwide. But an hour before the announcement, Jinwoo received a call that threatened to overshadow everything they had worked to build. "Sir," Lee Jae-sung's voice was tight with concern. "We have a problem. Someone has leaked the financial details of your mother's medical insurance coverage for Mrs. Santos. The story is spinning it as nepotism, as you using company resources for personal benefits." Jinwoo felt the familiar tightness in his chest. Not anxiety this time, but anger. "Who leaked it?" "We're still investigating, but the damage is immediate. 3 board members are asking for an emergency meeting, and the financial press is questioning whether this violates corporate governance standards." "What's the actual financial impact?" "Minimal. Mrs. Santos's treatment costs represent less than 0.01% of our annual budget, and it's completely legal under our executive family benefit policies. But perception-wise, it looks like I'm using shareholders' money to take care of my wife's family." Jinwoo looked across their home office where Amara was reviewing presentation materials for the press conference, her face focused and excited about announcing the global expansion of their community development program. She had no idea that their life was once again under attack. "Jae-sung, who's driving this story?" The initial leak came from Business Daily Korea, but it's being picked up internationally. The reporter is Kim Min-jun. He's known for aggressive coverage of corporate governance issues. "Set up a call with Kim Min-jun in 30 minutes. I want to talk to him directly." "Sir, that's highly unusual. Maybe we should go through our PR department." "No. If someone wants to question my integrity, they can do it to my face." 25 minutes later, Jinwoo was on a video call with Kim Min-jun, a sharp-eyed reporter in his 40s, with a reputation for taking down CEOs who bent ethical rules. "Mr. Park, thank you for agreeing to speak with me directly. As you know, I'm investigating whether Park Industries' payment for your mother-in-law's medical treatment represents an inappropriate use of corporate funds. Mr. Kim, I appreciate your diligence in investigating corporate governance. It's important work. But I think you're missing the bigger story here. Which is that corporate family benefit policies exist precisely to support executives' families during medical crises. My mother-in-law's treatment is covered under the same policy that would cover any board member's spouse or parent. The only difference is that she's Brazilian rather than Korean. But the timing seems convenient, approving these benefits just months before your marriage to her daughter. The timing, Jinwoo said carefully, reflects the reality that serious illness doesn't wait for convenient corporate calendar schedules. But Mr. Kim, let me ask you something. If I were married to a Korean woman whose mother needed expensive medical treatment, would we be having this conversation?" The reporter paused, clearly considering the question. "Probably not. Then what we're really discussing isn't corporate governance. It's whether Korean companies should support their executives' international families with the same policies they apply to domestic families. That's an interesting perspective. It's the only perspective that makes sense in a global business environment. Mr. Kim, in 2 hours I'm announcing Park Industries' expansion into 12 international markets. We're going to employ thousands of people across 3 continents, generate millions in revenue, and fund community development programs that will impact hundreds of thousands of lives. Does it make sense to focus on a medical insurance payment that represents 0.01% of our budget, or should we talk about the 99% that's creating value for shareholders and communities?" By the time the call ended, Jinwoo had not only defended the insurance coverage, but had convinced Kim Min-jun to attend the press conference and cover the global expansion announcement. "How did you do that?" Amara asked, having overheard the last part of the conversation. "I told him the truth. Sometimes people are so focused on looking for corruption that they miss the actual story." The press conference that afternoon was a masterclass in corporate communication. Jin-woo opened with a direct acknowledgement of the morning's controversy, explaining the family benefit policy clearly and transparently, then pivoted immediately to the global expansion announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, standing beside Amara and a wall-sized map showing Park Industries' new international presence. "Today, we're not just announcing business expansion. We're announcing a fundamental shift in how global corporations can create value." The presentation that followed was unlike anything in Korean corporate history. Instead of focusing solely on projected revenues and market penetration, Jin-woo and Amara showcased the human impact of their community development model. They showed videos of the São Paulo Design School graduation ceremony, where 30 young people had received certificates that would transform their economic prospects. They presented data showing how community investment had created jobs, reduced crime rates, and increased local business development. "This isn't charity disguised as business," Amara explained to the international media audience. "This is business that recognizes that sustainable profit requires sustainable communities. When we invest in people's potential, everyone wins." "Mr. Park," a reporter called out. "Critics say you're using corporate resources to fund your personal social justice agenda. How do you respond?" "I respond by showing you the numbers. Our community development programs have generated a 340% return on investment through job creation, increased local spending, and reduced security costs. But more than that, they've created brand loyalty and employee satisfaction that translates to improved performance across all our business units." "Mrs. Park," another journalist addressed Amara, "how do you balance your role as CEO's wife with your professional responsibilities?" "I don't balance them," Amara replied with a confident smile. "I integrate them. My marriage to Jin-woo doesn't compromise my professional judgment. It enhances it. Together, we see possibilities that neither of us would see alone. That's not a conflict of interest. That's a competitive advantage." The final question came from Kim Min-jun, the reporter who had challenged them that morning. "Mr. Park, looking back on the controversies surrounding your relationship, do you have any regrets about the path you chose?" Jin-woo looked at Amara, then back at the crowd of journalists and cameras broadcasting their words around the world. "My only regret," he said, "is that it took me 34 years to learn that the greatest business strategy isn't about eliminating risk. It's about taking the right risks for the right reasons. I risked everything for love, and I gained everything that matters. A partner who makes me better, work that creates lasting value, and the knowledge that success isn't worth having unless you can share it with someone who sees you as more than your achievements." The press conference ended with thunderous applause, but more importantly, it ended with a fundamental shift in how the media and the business community viewed Jin-woo and Amara's partnership. They weren't just a CEO and his wife, they were co-architects of a new model for conscious capitalism. As they left the conference room, Amara took Jin-woo's hand and squeezed it tight. "Ready for the next adventure?" she asked. "With you, I'm ready for anything." But neither of them could have predicted that their next adventure would involve a phone call from Brazil, with news that would test everything they thought they knew about family, sacrifice, and the true meaning of home. 2 years later, Jin-woo stood in the same Incheon airport terminal where this story had begun, but this time, he wasn't on his knees begging someone not to leave. This time, he was waiting with barely contained excitement for the arrival of guests who would change their lives forever. The Park Industries' global expansion had exceeded every projection. 12 community development centers across 3 continents were generating not just profits, but measurable social impact. The São Paulo Center alone had graduated over 200 students, created 150 permanent jobs, and attracted international attention from corporations wanting to replicate their model. But today wasn't about business. Today was about family. Flight 453 from São Paulo is now arriving at Gate 12. The announcement echoed through the terminal in Korean, English, and Portuguese. A linguistic bridge that perfectly represented how much Seoul had changed in the past 3 years. Amara squeezed Jinwoo's hand as they watched passengers begin to emerge from customs. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified," he admitted. "What if they don't like Korea? What if the language barrier is too difficult? What if you stop worrying and remember that love translates into any language?" The first person they saw was Conceição Santos, walking slowly but under her own power, her cancer in complete remission thanks to the experimental treatment that had worked better than anyone dared hope. Behind her came Tiago, grinning widely as he pushed a cart loaded with luggage and what appeared to be several musical instruments. But it was the third figure who made Jinwoo's breath catch in his throat. A tiny girl with Amara's eyes and smile, holding Conceição's hand and looking around the airport with wonder and curiosity. "Tia Amara," the child called out in Portuguese, breaking free from her grandmother's grip and running toward them. Amara knelt down and caught her 3-year-old niece, Isabella, in a fierce hug. "Minha princesa, how was the flight?" "Long," Isabella replied in Portuguese, then switched to carefully practiced Korean. "Annyeonghaseyo, Jinwoo Samchon." Jinwoo felt tears spring to his eyes as the little girl who had been born just months after his wedding to Amara addressed him as uncle in perfect Korean pronunciation. Tiago had been teaching her, preparing for this moment when Amara's Brazilian family would finally come to live permanently in Seoul. The reunion in the airport was everything Jinwoo had hoped for, and more. Conceição embraced him like the son she'd never had. Tiago presented him with a small Brazilian flag for his office, and Isabella insisted on being carried on his shoulders as they walked through the terminal. "Welcome to Korea," Jinwoo said in Portuguese, his pronunciation much improved after 2 years of practice. "Welcome to the family," Conceição replied in Korean, making everyone laugh at the linguistic role reversal. The drive through Seoul was a revelation. Isabella pressed her face to the car window, chattering excitedly in a mixture of Portuguese and Korean as she pointed out skyscrapers, neon signs, and the Han River. Conceição asked thoughtful questions about Korean culture, clearly eager to understand her daughter's adopted home. Tiago took photos of everything, already planning Instagram posts that would document their Korean adventure. Their new apartment in Gangnam was perfect, a spacious 3-bedroom unit in the same building as Jinwoo and Amara's penthouse, with views of the city and enough room for a Brazilian grandmother, a university-age son, and a curious toddler to build their new life. "It's beautiful," Conceição said, exploring the rooms that had been decorated with a blend of Korean and Brazilian elements. "But are you sure about this? Us living so close to your married life?" "My," Amara said, using the Portuguese word for mother that had become natural over their years together. "Family isn't an interruption to married life. Family is what makes married life meaningful." That evening, they gathered on the rooftop terrace of Jinwoo and Amara's penthouse for dinner, a feast that perfectly represented their multicultural family. Korean barbecue sat alongside Brazilian feijoada, kimchi shared table space with pão de açúcar, and Isabella delighted everyone by confidently using chopsticks to eat both Korean and Brazilian food. "I have an announcement," Tiago said as they lingered over dessert and wine. "I've been accepted to Seoul National University's engineering program, with a full scholarship." The table erupted in cheers and congratulations. Tiago's acceptance to Korea's most prestigious university represented not just personal achievement, but the success of the educational programs that Park Industries had been funding. "I'm proud of you," Jinwoo told his brother-in-law, But I'm not surprised. You've worked incredibly hard for this. I had good teachers, Tiago replied, looking at Amara with gratitude. And good examples of what's possible when you're brave enough to chase your dreams across continents. As the evening wound down, Jinwoo found himself on the terrace with Conceição, both of them watching the Seoul skyline sparkle in the distance. "Thank you," she said quietly in Portuguese, "for giving my daughter a life I never could have imagined for her. Thank you for raising a daughter who taught me what life could be." Jinwoo replied in the same language. "Conceição, I want you to know that bringing you here isn't charity or obligation. You're not guests in our life. You're the foundation of our family." Even when Isabella wakes up at 5 a.m. singing Brazilian songs at the top of her lungs, Jinwoo laughed. "Especially then. This penthouse has been too quiet for too long." Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Amara found Jinwoo standing at their bedroom window, looking out over the city where their impossible love story had begun. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "I'm thinking about that day in the cafe when you asked me if I'd ever felt butterflies in my stomach. I told you I never had. And now? Now I feel them every day. When I watch you teach Isabella to paint. When I see your mother laughing at Korean dramas she doesn't understand. When Tiago calls me Hyung instead of Jinwoo Samchon. Every ordinary moment feels extraordinary because we built this life together." Amara turned him around to face her. "Jinwoo, do you remember what you asked me on our first date? You asked me what I wanted from life. Adventure, challenge, the chance to fall in love with something new. I got all of that. But I got something I didn't even know I wanted. I got home. Not a place, but a person. Not just a person, but a whole family that spans 2 continents and 3 languages and creates beauty everywhere we go." They kissed softly, a kiss that tasted like wine and promises and the comfortable intimacy of 2 people who had fought for their love and won. "So what's next?" Jinwoo asked. "What's our next impossible dream?" "Well," Amara said with a mischievous smile, "Isabella has been asking when she's going to get a Korean cousin to play with." "A cousin? Or a little brother? Or sister?" She's not picky about the details, but she's very clear about wanting more kids in the family. Jinwoo felt his heart skip a beat. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that love isn't just about 2 people finding each other. It's about creating something bigger than either of you could be alone. We've created a business that changes lives, a family that bridges cultures, and a home that proves love is stronger than every force that tries to tear it apart. And now we keep building. We add to this beautiful, complicated, extraordinary family we've created. We raise children who speak 3 languages and understand that the world is bigger than any one culture or country. We build a legacy that's about more than corporate profits. It's about proving that love, when it's real and brave and committed, can transform everything it touches." As they fell asleep that night, surrounded by the sounds of their extended family settling into their Korean home, Isabella's sleepy singing from down the hall, Conceição's quiet prayers in Portuguese, Tiago's late-night phone call with friends from Brazil, Jinwoo realized that his story had never been about choosing between love and responsibility. It had been about discovering that the deepest responsibility was to love completely, to build bridges instead of walls, and to create something beautiful enough to justify all the risks they'd taken to get there. 3 years ago, he'd been a man who measured success in stock prices and quarterly projections. Now he was a man who measured it in languages learned, lives changed, and the laughter of a little girl who called him uncle in Korean, and taught him that the most important business metric was how many people you could love without compromising who you were. The empire Park Jinwoo had inherited was stronger than ever. But the family he'd chosen to build with Amara Santos was his true masterpiece, a testament to the revolutionary idea that love wasn't a liability to be managed, but the foundation upon which everything worthwhile had to be constructed. A soul hummed to life around them, carrying the dreams of millions of people in dozens of languages. Jinwoo held his wife close and smiled at the future they were creating together, one impossible dream at a time. Some bridges, he had learned, weren't built to connect places. They were built to connect hearts. And the bridge he'd built to Amara's heart had become the pathway to a life more extraordinary than anything he'd ever dared to imagine possible. Forever, finally, was exactly where they belonged.